Chapter 921. The center of the giant rock was almost completely melted. About 10 meters deep into the ground, a ball of fire wrapped around a bright and dazzling long sword stabbed into the ground. One could feel a strong sense of righteousness from it. This righteousness was not something that any divine weapon in the human world could compare to. At least Lin Muyu had never seen it before. "It's a magic weapon," he said with certainty. "It's the weapon that Brother Demon Emperor delivered to me." Qin Yin smiled faintly and pushed his arm. "Then why aren't you going to get it? Don't let others snatch it away." Lin Muyu leaped into the deep pit and circled around the Shenyuan sword. Then she reached out and gently grasped the hilt of the sword. Suddenly her entire body trembled. She felt a strange sense of familiarity. It was as if the power of the Shenyuan sword and the supreme divine power in her body had some kind of subtle resonance. On the delicate and majestic hilt, 2 words Shenyuan were engraved, which made Lin Muyu's heart beat faster. Could this be the legendary ancient magic weapon, the Shenyuan sword? This sword had been away from the human world for too long, and the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor ruled the East Heaven. If they wanted to find the Shenyuan sword, it should be the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor who found it first. And the reason why there was this resonance was because Lin Muyu's supreme divine power came from Fuxi, and the Shenyuan sword came from Shenyuan Xiaoyu. They were originally of the same origin. With a little force she pulled the sword out of the scabbard. Suddenly a clear ding sound of the sword echoed. The sword was bright and translucent, showing the shape of all things in the world. It was very majestic. It really lived up to the name of the Shenyuan sword. Lin Muyu's heart beat faster. The Shenyuan sword seemed to be innately compatible with her power. If she wielded the Shenyuan sword to attack, her power would probably increase by at least 50%. Looking at the sky, he smiled and said, "Thank you, big brother. Wait for me in the heaven realm. I will come to find you as soon as I complete my mission in the mortal realm." She grabbed the scabbard and leaped onto the surface. At this moment, Wei Chou, Zhen Yifan, Suyu, Su Jiantao, Terralin and the others had all heard the commotion and were stunned when they saw Lin Muyu flying out with an unparalleled divine sword. "Your Highness, you, that is?" Zheng Yifan asked. "Shenyuan Xiaoyu sword." Lin Muyu answered briefly, "The sword of the Yellow Emperor." However, the Shattered Cauldron realm might not have any legends about the Shenyuan sword. Zhen Yifan nodded. "Yes, indeed I don't. However, there is a legend in the Heaven realm regarding one of the 10 great divine weapons. I didn't expect that your Highness would really obtain a divine weapon. Congratulations." "Thank you, Master Fan." Lin Muyu smiled and said to Qin Yin, "Xiaoyin, looks like I can give you the star sword. It will be your sword from now on. The heaven-suppressing sword has also been lost." "All right, thank you, your Highness Emperor Qin." Qin Yin nodded happily. She had experienced a lot and seemed to have matured a lot. She no longer called Lin Muyu Big Brother Yu in public, but called him by his title. This seemed more dignified, but it didn't affect the intimacy between the two at all. After all, everyone could see that Qin Yin and Lin Muyu were in love with each other. This was a well-known fact. Su'er said, "With this Shenyuan Xiaoyu sword, we should have a higher chance of winning against the Tianji Empire. Even if we encounter experts like Baiming Huan and Dora, we should not be at a disadvantage." "Yes." Tang Xiaoxi nodded, "But that Dora also has a divine weapon and is very powerful. If we encounter her, we still have to be careful. That woman is very vicious." Lin Muyu gripped the Shenyuan sword tightly and said, "If we really encounter Dora, let me take care of her." "No." Qin Yin pulled Lin Muyu's wrist and said, "Leave Dora to me. Since I came down from the Western Divine Realm with her, I can't ignore the mistakes I made unintentionally. Dora killed Marquis Yao Yuan of the Tranquil Sea and Duke Luo Xn of the North. She has a blood feud with me and I have to take care of her. Otherwise, I won't be able to face the spirits of Lord Yao Yuan and Duke Luo Xn in heaven." "Yes, that's good. Leave Baiming Huan to me." "Yes." Lin Muyu looked around and said, "Everyone rest early. We will break camp in 4 hours and try to reach the Unicorn Forest by noon to meet up with Big Brother Feng and Yan." "Yes, Your Highness." Everyone left one by one. The march was very simple and they didn't even bring tents. So Lin Muyu still chose to rest under a tree where there were not many people. Tang Xiaoxi and Qin Yin snuggled in each other's arms and soon fell asleep, breathing evenly. Lin Muyu looked at their sleeping posture and couldn't help but smile. Then she closed her eyes and fell asleep as well. After a long time, when the sky was still dark, Lin Muyu suddenly woke up. In the Spirit Pulse art, a powerful force was approaching quickly. At the same time, Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi woke up as well. Qin Yin frowned slightly and said, "Someone is coming. And very strong." Tang Xiaoxi added. "No, he's injured." Lin Muyu smiled faintly and said, "His aura is sometimes strong and sometimes weak. Let's go and meet this person before the army moves." Yes. The three figures flashed and disappeared into the distance. In the dense forest 5 miles away, a warhorse was hurriedly galloping through the forest. However, the rider suddenly pulled on the reins. The warhorse neighed and slid a few meters on the grass. He slowly lifted his cloak, revealing the face of a middle-aged man. He sneered and said, "Come out, you guys." On the branch, 3 people floated down. It was Lin Muyu and the other 2. The middle-aged man could sense the existence of Lin Muyu and the others at such a close distance. This meant that his strength was not weak. He raised his eyebrows and stared at Qin Yin's face. He said, "I know you. You are Xin, the first place of the God's chosen trial and a level 7 battle angel. Why are you with 2 people from the Qin Empire?" Qin Yin closed her eyes, but she could almost see the person's silhouette with her spiritual sense. She said, "I am not only Xin, I am also Qin Yin, Qin Jin's daughter." "Who are you?" "Me." The middle-aged man laughed coldly and said, "My name is Mo Luo. I am the dispatcher of the southern tribes of the Western Heaven Realm. I came from the banished land. However, the army was tricked by the despicable 7 luminaries demon emperor. Most of them have fallen and I am one of the survivors. Xin, listen to my advice. Immediately follow me to the Tianji Empire's camp and apologize to Marshal Baiming Huan. Maybe if I speak up for you, he will forgive you and spare your life." A beautiful smile appeared on Qin Yin's face. "Are you asking me to submit to the Western Heaven Realm again? You are someone who has experienced the Battle Angel's inheritance. Your bloodline has already been integrated with the power of the Western Divine Realm. What? Are you still thinking about the ties of mortals?" Qin Yin smiled faintly. "I am Qin Yin. I am Qin Jin's daughter. I was once the ruler of this land. That is all. The Western Heaven Realm's gift to me is a kind of plunder. I remember the pain of losing my paradise. I remember Claude's greed and cruelty. Mo Luo, I will give you a chance. Immediately surrender to the Qin Empire. Otherwise, you will not be able to leave this place today." "What do you mean?" Mo Luo became alert. Only now did he realize that Lin Muyu and Tang Xiaoxi were slowly increasing their divine power. He had completely underestimated the 2 of them. In fact, their strength was not inferior to his at all. Mo Luo could not help but roar in anger. The war horse under him could not withstand the divine power and turned into a pile of blood mist. Mo Luo was in the air. His black robe suddenly shattered and 4 dazzling white wings appeared on his back. It was a 4-winged angel. A 4-winged angel with the cultivation of a god emperor. No wonder he could penetrate the flame knot of the 7 luminaries demon emperor and not die. "Be careful." Tang Xiaoxi's face tensed up. A god emperor of the 71 heavenly grottos. So powerful. Mo Luo laughed aloud and slowly drew a sword of light. He looked down at the 3 of them and said, "The 3 of you are only god kings. None of you have become a god emperor, so you don't know the difference between god emperors and god kings. Today I'll be merciful and let you understand this difference. Come, which one of you wants to die first?" Qin Yin said faintly, "So you are saying that you are not willing to surrender and want to go to Baiming Huan to listen to his orders? I am a 4-winged angel of the Western Heaven Realm. Naturally, I will not be controlled by the people of the Broken Cauldron Realm. Give up, Xin. Since I cannot change your mind, I will bring your head back to the Western Divine Realm to apologize to the Lord Ruler." "You?" Qin Yin gritted her teeth. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly, and tiny golden red flames lingered on each of her eyelashes. The surroundings suddenly became scorching hot, and the flaming eyes were about to come out. "Wait." Lin Muyu suddenly raised her arm and blocked the flaming eyes with a strong palm. She smiled. "Xiaoyin, you don't have to do anything. I can take care of this Mo Luo by myself." Can you?" Qin Yin asked. "Don't worry. If I don't have this ability, how can I protect you and Xiaoxi in the future?" Lin Muyu smiled confidently. She slowly pulled out her sword. Instantly, the light of the Shenyuan sword shot up into the sky. The surroundings immediately emitted a strong righteous aura. "Gem?" Mo Luo was slightly startled. He never thought that there would be such a strong person in the Broken Cauldron Realm. Moreover, this person was wearing the military insignia of the Qin Empire. Obviously, he was an enemy. "You're Lin Muyu?" Mo Luo suddenly asked. "Yo, you know me? Haha, your supreme head is mine. Come and take it if you can." Lin Muyu raised her long sword horizontally. With a confident smile on her face, she decisively attacked first. She silently recited the mental cultivation method of the invisible elephant spell. The Shenyuan sword directly swept out with the power of the overwhelming righteous aura and the chaos of all lives. Moreover, the force field of the invisible elephant spell completely controlled the surroundings. The opponent did not even have a chance to break the void and escape. Chapter 922. Mo Luo was a four-winged angel. Even in the Western Heavens realm he was a respected figure. In his own plane he was a godlike existence. Therefore he naturally did not care about a divine king like Lin Muyu. Buzz buzz buzz. The light sword in his hand was filled with energy. He slammed it towards Lin Muyu's Shenyuan sword. Bang. Not only did Lin Muyu's sword carry the power of the chaotic element of the common life, it also borrowed the power of the earth in the forest. A mere first strike actually forcefully shook off Mo Luo's light sword. Good. Tang Xiaoxi clapped and cheered. Don't be too happy yet. Mo Luo sneered. His body was surrounded by the scorching sun, evaporating the rain and dew in the forest. Suddenly, there was a magnificent scene of clouds rising. The corner of his mouth curled up. He said, "That attack just now, I only used 30% of my strength. Don't be complacent too early. You will die a horrible death." Lin Muyu did not speak. She suddenly moved quickly. She used falling star step. Stepping on meteors, she moved around Mo Luo at a speed that was hard to catch with the naked eye. Mo Luo could not help but take a deep breath. What a fast movement technique. He had to stay calm and not rely on his eyes to judge. He had to rely on his aura. Otherwise it would be difficult to block Lin Muyu's next attack. But it was still too late. Bang. Stepping on the void, Lin Muyu's figure shrouded in the light of the Shenyuan sword bloomed in the night sky. Blood-red energy flew up and the two luminaries' demonic dance directly hit the opponent's back. Mo Luo could not dodge or even turn around. He could only swing his sword to block from behind. Boom. The power of the 7 planets clashed with the light elemental law divine power. This time it was Lin Muyu who had the upper hand. Mo Luo took a few steps forward, looking rather disheveled. However, when he turned around, Lin Muyu disappeared again. Her aura was completely gone, as if she had merged with the entire forest. Buff. Mo Luo hurriedly raised his head and held his sword horizontally. With an angry roar, he rose from the ground and shouted, "Blaze light cut." Amidst the buzzing sound, the celestial bodies of all living beings merged with the celestial bodies of the Shenyuan sword. When the power surged into the sword, Lin Muyu's confidence was boosted. The Shenyuan sword was indeed a divine weapon. The morality it contained had at least doubled the power of the third star. It then blasted down on Mo Luo's head, 3 luminaries' calamity. Violent sounds rang out incessantly, and the ground began to crack open. A tyrannical force swept out, uprooting the trees. As for the saplings, they were directly turned into powder. When the two swords collided, the power was in no way inferior to that of the magic crystal cannons. Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi stood in place, unmoving. The strong wind blew against their divine walls, but it was unable to move them at all. As spectators, their strength was actually not inferior to the authorities. With the third sword, Mo Luo was once again at a disadvantage. After the blaze light cut was neutralized, the power of Lin Muyu's third star continued to penetrate into Mo Luo's divine walls. Furthermore, it was an overwhelming morality that Mo Luo hated very much. Although he was a god, Mo Luo had never cultivated his heart but his physique. He hated this kind of hypocritical morality to the core. Lin Muyu was still moving quickly, looking for an opportunity to attack twice. 4 luminaries demon god's cry. 5 luminaries 8 wastelands destruction. Mo Luo was in an even more sorry state. He never thought that a dignified god emperor like himself would be repeatedly defeated by a god king. Even if his opponent had the disposition of a supreme being, it shouldn't be like this. Finally, Mo Luo noticed the sword in Lin Muyu's hand and asked, "Your sword, what exactly is its origin?" "You don't need to know its origin. You only need to know that this is my ancestor's sword." "Ancestor?" Mo Luo suddenly felt a burst of anger and roared, "Die, you arrogant brat." He finally used 100% of his divine power. Everything in the surrounding forest started to evaporate, and even the gravitational field started to spin. Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi quietly stood in place, observing the power of the Western Heaven Realm's God Emperor. In the field, Lin Muyu also slowly flipped the Shenyuan sword. The long sword hummed in response. It seemed that the Shen Yuan sword also hated Mo Luo, this vicious and evil god. This four-winged angel used his strength to bully the weak, and he was the only supreme being. He didn't cultivate as an immortal but as a devil. Since he was a devil, then the Shen Yuan sword had the right to exterminate devils. Pa pa pa, streams of light blossomed on the Shen Yuan sword. The world spun and the universe reversed. Lin Muyu let out a low roar and activated the second strongest attack of the 7 stars. 6 stars heavenly tribulation. Boom. The huge ball of light expanded, tearing a huge hole in the ground. Waves of air rushed towards the surroundings. This time Lin Muyu had used 100% of his divine power. Otherwise, it would be impossible to subdue this 71st heaven paradise four-winged angel. Jie. The 4 wings on Mo Luo's back were partially torn by the supreme divine power. His feathers fluttered in the air. His breathing was very rapid. This attack, even if he used all his strength, he couldn't gain the slightest bit of advantage from Lin Muyu. This 7 stars heavenly tribulation was powerful and overbearing. It was indeed not something that ordinary martial arts could compare to. Come, what other abilities do you have? Feel free to use them. All right. Lin Muyu's blood vessels churned from the shock. A trace of blood even flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He stretched out his hand and touched a drop of blood. Immediately, the blood evaporated into a small ball of blood mist on his fingertip. The golden supreme divine power quickly rushed in and fused with the blood mist. Then, it condensed into a large ball of blood-red light on the blade of the sword. Come. The most powerful attack was coming, blood refining the firmament. This was an attack that was different from the 7 stars heavenly tribulation. It drew on the power of the stars and the explosive power of the bloodline. Mo Luo's soul trembled slightly. He knew how powerful this attack was. He hurriedly raised his light sword. His body danced in the air, creating a golden light wall. Like a folded sharp blade, he attacked Lin Muyu. He roared, "Light all slash!" The Shen Yuan sword suddenly shone brightly. Buzz! Amidst the clanging sound of the sword, the blood refining the firmament broke through the opponent's light wall. Dang! A crisp sound rang out. Mo Luo's light sword was actually forcibly cut into 2 by the Shen Yuan sword. Then the blood refining the firmament fell, directly smashing Mo Luo's divine wall. As the Shen Yuan sword slashed down, Mo Luo's body was split into 2. However, he didn't become a corpse. Instead, he directly evaporated under the power of the blood refining the firmament. In the air, a dazzling godhead was floating there, glowing with light. With the power of the Shen Yuan sword, Lin Muyu actually killed a god emperor in just 7 moves. So powerful, Tang Xiaoxi opened her mouth wide. So powerful, Mu. Qinin had a faint smile on her lips. She knew Lin Muyu's power. With the power of the Shen Yuan sword, this result was actually expected. Clatter. Lin Muyu grabbed the godhead and put it into her pouch. This way, together with Bailey Qin's godhead, they now had 2 godheads of god emperors. Moreover, Mo Luo's godhead was actually a heavenly Dao godhead. Was very good. At this time the sound of hooves could be heard. Wei Chou Su Jiantao came with light cavalry. They all looked at the forest that was already on fire, dumbfounded. What happened? What happened here? Su Jiantao asked. Wei Chou was also a god state expert, so his perception was stronger. He smiled and said, "Congratulations, Your Highness. It seems that Your Highness has just killed a god state expert." Lin Muyu nodded and said, "We did not guess wrong. The ruler of Western Heaven Realm did indeed send another batch of angels to Shattered Cauldron World. However, most of them were intercepted and killed by the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor. However, there were still some that slipped through the net. Although this Mo Luo is a god emperor, after being intercepted by the Demon Emperor, he lost at least 40% of his power. Otherwise, I would not have been able to kill him so easily." Qinin asked, "Brother, are you worried?" "And how can I not be worried? If a few more God Emperor level 4-winged angels appear and we are not present, it will probably cause a series of disturbances." Tang Xiaoxi said, "We can only take one step at a time. Since everyone is awake, let's continue marching and reach the steel wall as soon as possible. There should be a bloody battle there." "Alright, pass down the order, continue marching, full speed." "Yes, Your Highness." After the sun rose, the fog dispersed rapidly. The water of the Rice River flowed slowly, and there were messy sounds amidst the gurgling water. The Tianji Empire's army on the east bank had finally gathered enough bamboo rafts and started to cross the river. "Prepare for battle." Feng Jixing did not sleep the entire night and sat on the battlement in a daze. At this moment he decisively gave a military order. He pressed his hand on the hilt of the Crimson Phoenix saber and said, "All magic crystal cannons, listen up. Aim at the place on the Rice River where there are the most people but there are no dragon knights guarding the area. Don't King waste all the magic crystal cannons on the Dragon Imperial Spiral." "Yes, Your Highness Prince Xn." Everyone laughed out loud. The enemy was at the gates, and Feng Jixing's vulgar words made everyone feel more relaxed. After all, many of them were new soldiers and had never participated in a battle before. Looking at the densely packed crowd, some of them were so scared that their legs turned to jelly. If they did not take some measures, they would not be able to fight this battle. In the distance, the densely packed bamboo rafts started to cross the river. The magic crystal cannons on the city walls also started to fire. Boom, boom, boom. Many mushroom clouds were set off in the distance. The prowess of the magic crystal cannons was very great, and huge waves that were several meters tall immediately rose on the Rice River, overturning many of the bamboo rafts that were protected by the Dragon Imperial Spiral. Not all of the Tianji Empire's soldiers knew how to swim, and there were many cries for help. Jianghu laughed out loud. "There are so many people from the Tianji Empire. Will they never be able to finish all of them? Then let's continue. I want to see how many of them are worthy of death." Feng Jixing fell silent, his brows furrowed tightly. "What's wrong, Your Highness Prince Xn?" Scholar Ling asked. Feng Jixing looked at the army crossing the river on the Rice River and said, "I'm worried about something." "Oh, what is it?" Luo Yu was also interested. Feng Jixing said, "We've lost many of the magic crystal cannons in the hands of the Tianji Empire. And you see, when the steel wall was built, it was used to attack the demon race and it was very close to the shore. That way, the demon race would be able to enter the shooting range of the white drill arrows when they reached the shore. But we neglected one thing, and that is that there were no magic crystal cannons at that time. Now, the magic crystal cannons are getting better and better, and their shooting range is as high as 1,000 meters. If the people on the other side can use the magic crystal cannons, then they can directly bombard our steel wall on the other side." As he said that, Feng Jixing sighed. "As time goes on, the situation of the war will also change and we have neglected this point." Luo Yu, Zhang Wei, Chu Chu and the others' expressions changed drastically. It seemed that they finally understood the reason why Bai Ming Huan hadn't launched the attack yet. He was waiting for the magic crystal cannons to be in position. "What are you waiting for?" Luo Yu raised her eyebrows and looked at everyone. "All the Eagle Scouts, go out and find out about the enemy's situation. Once you find the magic crystal cannons, report back immediately." Chapter 923. In the morning, a rumbling sound came from the north. Thick smoke rose from the purple mushroom cloud. The ground was shaking slightly. The steel defense wall that was at least 100 meters long was razed to the ground after nearly 10 consecutive cannon blasts. "I knew it." Feng Jixing clenched his teeth and shouted in a low voice, "Zhang Wei, take some men and block the gap. We can't let the Tianji army break through our defense lines so easily. Behind us are the defenseless states and prefectures of Cangnan province. We can't let the Tianji army break through even if we all die here." "Yes." Zhang Wei, who was riding on the horse, saluted to Feng Jixing with his long saber. Then he led the cavalry and charged forward. Meanwhile, the Dragon Knight kept flying in the sky and released sword energy onto the city wall. The steel defense wall that was nearly 10 miles long had turned into a burning battlefield. Not far away, the Beaming King, Ice Palm, Fire Fist, and other godly state experts had already started fighting with the Dragon Knights. Explosions of flames and divine power continuously rang out in the sky. Below the city, the densely packed army of the Tianji Empire had already blotted out the sky and covered the earth as they charged towards the Dragon Knights. Ladders, hooks and other weapons danced chaotically in the air. The scene was extremely chaotic. In such a chaotic battlefield, the one who could remain calm would be the final winner. Feng Jixing. A sharp voice came from the sky. Feng Jixing looked up and saw a beautiful girl holding a long spear. She was wearing a battle angel costume and had 4 black wings spread behind her. She had a disdainful look on her face. Her long spear was shining brightly. In the next moment, she dashed over like a sharp arrow, aiming at the city wall where Feng Jixing was standing. "It's Duola." Feng Jixing raised his 2 sabers and charged out of the city wall without saying anything. He waved his sabers and a fierce firestorm was stirred up. The saber energy was hidden in the storm and flew out invincibly. Dozens of soldiers of the Qinji army who were pushing ladders were turned into ashes immediately. Bus. Amidst the sounds of collision, Doris Tig's spear forcefully tore apart the energy field of the Sky Devourer. The surrounding time seemed to have come to a standstill, but Dora's figure accelerated quite a bit. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Feng Jixing and thrust his spear forward like the fangs of a venomous snake. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, Feng Jixing swept out the clear dragon blade in his left hand, and formed an endless wall of wind. Dang! It collided with Dugas Long's spear. Suddenly, a tyrannical divine wave swept out, and caused Feng Jixing's blood to boil. He fell down with a muffled groan, and forcibly crashed into the city wall. He was battered and exhausted, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He had already lost. Die. Duo La let out a delicate cry, and her figure shot forward like a bolt of lightning again. However, just when she was about 10 meters away from him, a silhouette flew over. It was Scholar Ling. He raised a wrist guard in his hand and shouted in a low voice, "Myriad world of frost." Swoosh, 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 heaven and earth were activated. This was a divine book, and a hexagonal frost wall appeared in front of her. Then, more frost walls exploded on top of the wall, and they surged forward like a chain array. Duo La had no choice but to hold her spear and retreat. The pitiful hundreds of Tianji army soldiers below her were all frozen into ice cubes. They had already died in battle, and it was a tragic sight to behold. Ah! Duo La looked at the chain of explosions and she couldn't help but gasp. At this moment, an old man in a white robe descended from the sky. He raised his hand slightly, and it seemed as if he was drawing the power of all the living beings in the surrounding forest. The green leaves danced wildly and condensed into a shield. Energy enshrouded the shield, and even the river behind him became even more turbulent. It was Chu Chu. He was the only one who had comprehended the laws of nature to this extent. Scholar Ling raised another divine book in his hand, and his eyes were filled with mockery. He smiled and said, "Duo La, you were fortunate enough to receive the inheritance of the black-winged battle angel. Why don't you cherish your life? Your Highness Feng Jixing, use your dimensional blade. I want to see if Duo La can continue to act fierce if the three of us work together." All right. Feng Jixing still wanted to use Duo La's power to intimidate others. He held his two blades horizontally, and electric currents surged around him. Gusts of dimensional wind appeared. Although Feng Jixing's divine power was much weaker than Duo La's, unknown power would always create a psychological pressure on people. Duo La looked coldly at Chu Chu and then at Scholar Ling. What shocked her even more was that not far away, a huge creature was tearing apart a dragon knight and his dragon in the air, roaring incessantly. It was the Beeman King. The Beeman King's strength was comparable to an expert who had just entered the God Emperor realm. This was no joke. Although Duo La was proud and arrogant, she definitely didn't have the confidence to challenge so many people with just her four-winged strength. Since when did the Shattered Cauldron realm have so many experts? She muttered to herself and disappeared with the Dig's spear. In the blink of an eye, she appeared in the chariot formation 3 miles away. The war drums thundered. Baiming Huan, Gong Shangming, Lin Tongtian, and the rest were on the main chariot watching the battle from afar. "Miss Duo La, how is the battle?" Baiming Huan asked respectfully with a smile. Duo La said, "Other than Feng Jixing, there are a few monsters that are ridiculously strong. Among them there is a huge beast with very strong spirit energy. I'm afraid that even the Dig's spear might not be able to defeat it. Other than that, there is another person who took out a very powerful heavenly book. I don't know where it came from, but it is very powerful. Marshall should have seen it too." "Yes." Baiming Huan said, "That person is Scholar Ling, a genius who specializes in all kinds of heavenly books. Unfortunately, he can't be used by me and is just a dog of Lin Muyu. As for that monster, it is the Beeman King, one of the White Leaf Four Masters. Although it is an idiot, it is born with great strength and cannot be underestimated. Miss Duo La, you don't need to be anxious. We just need to sit and watch. Their steel wall has already been destroyed by us by hundreds of meters. As long as our brave warriors break through their defense line, they will collapse on their own." Duo La nodded but then asked, "Marshal, don't you want to go to the battlefield yourself and kill Feng Jixing with your own hands? One Feng Jixing's life or death is not enough to change the overall situation. There is no need to rush." Baiming Huan narrowed his eyes and said, "Moreover, our scouts have reported that Lin Muyu, Xin, Tang Xiaoxi, and Su Jintao have already led 60,000 soldiers into Cangnan province. They will arrive at the battlefield in half a day at most. It is better not to act rashly. Haha, Duola suddenly laughed. She already knew that on the South Mountain battlefield, famous warriors like Bailey Qin and Han Shu had all died. Although Baiming Huan was a god emperor, he was just a warrior who had just entered the god emperor realm. Compared to Bailey Qin, who was close to the peak of the 90 realm, how could Baiming Huan not be afraid? After all, cultivation was for longevity and glory. Baiming Huan did not want to die so early. Instead of going to the battlefield himself, it was better to exchange the lives of ants for a victory. The difference between a god and a human was that they understood the power of the god realm. But there was one thing that was the power of a god would be used up. Baiming Huan only wanted to exchange the lives of the Tianji army for the lives of a god. Even 10,000 people for one god was worth it. At this moment, a dragon knight descended from the sky and said respectfully, "Marshal, someone from Winterfrost City wants to see you." From Winterfrost City? Who is it? He claims to be an angel from the Western Heaven realm. Oh. Baiming Huan frowned. Ask him to come. Yes. The soldiers with shields in their hands scattered, and a man came riding over on a horse. He was wearing a tattered robe, and his face was covered with scars that looked like he had been burned. He jumped off the horse and walked onto the chariot step by step with a cold look in his eyes. He stopped in front of Baiming Huan, his face expressionless. How dare you? A dragon knight scolded. Who are you? Why aren't you bowing to the marshal? Baiming Huan raised his hand to stop him. Wait. He looked at the newcomer and smiled. Who are you? Please show your identity. Me? The newcomer smiled arrogantly and said, Since you want to know, I'll do as you wish. Open your eyes and see who I am. As he spoke, he let out a low roar, and his body instantly shot into the sky like a god that had descended into the world. Moreover, 2 pairs of pure white wings of light unfolded behind him. Shockingly, he was a 4-winged radiant angel. Radiant angels were very respected even in the Western Heaven realm. For example, high-level gods like Li Fei and Merlin who were at least level 90 Grotto Heavens were all radiant angels. A powerful force field surrounded them. Baiming Huan was instantly covered in sweat. His heart was filled with respect and he could not help but kneel on one knee. Lower world, Baiming Huan greets Lord Radiant Angel. The Radiant Angel smiled in satisfaction and retracted his aura. My name is Zai, 90 Grotto Heavens, Radiant Angel under Ruler Claude. I'm also the only Radiant Angel in this exile mission. Unfortunately, we fell into the trap of the 7 Luminaries Demon Emperor. Most of the angels have fallen and I don't know how many are still alive. So it's Lord Zai, Radiant Angel. My apologies. Baiming Huan's face was ashen as he lowered his head. A Radiant Angel was enough to control dozens of dimensions. Baiming Huan, a marshal, was really nothing in front of Zai. Zai's gaze fell on Dora, Luo Fei and the other battle angels nearby. Looking at the Tig's spear, Zai said lightly, You're Dora? Yes, Lord Radiant Angel. Dora's arrogance was much more restrained. After all, Zai's identity was too noble. Zai sneered. What a bunch of trash. Lord Ruler sent 10 of you to Shattered Cauldron Realm, but you still haven't made any progress after so long. How disappointing. Dora frowned. Lord, there's a reason for this. It's only because Sheen betrayed us and brought Terralyn, Lake and the other battle angels to the enemy. Otherwise we wouldn't have had so little success so far. Sheen betrayed us. Zai was shocked. She's Blazing Angel Xian's sister. However, she has another identity. She is Empress Qin of the Shattered Cauldron Realm. She was reborn after the 6 paths of reincarnation. She deceived Lady Xian, deceived the ruler, and deceived everyone. Humph, this despicable woman. Zai clenched his fists. I'll kill her myself. Chapter 924. Baiming Huan. Zai suddenly turned and looked at the general. Baiming Huan hurriedly bowed. Your subordinate is here, Lord Zai. Which country do you belong to? The Tianji Empire. How many people do you have now? Nearly 300,000. How many people do they have? About, less than 200,000. Zai swung his sleeves and said with a livid face, What a piece of trash. Didn't you claim that the Sky Pole continent is the strongest lower realm? You can't even take down a broken cauldron realm, not to mention that you have more soldiers. You're such a disappointment. If you can't be the general, I think we should replace you. Baiming Huan's face was pale. Lord Zai, please listen to me. My army's attacks are getting fiercer and fiercer. In less than a day we will break through this damn steel wall. Steel wall? Yes. Baiming Huan pointed at the chaotic battlefield in the west. Lord Zai, please look. The Broken Cauldron realm has built a steel defense line along the river. They call it the steel wall. It's 20 meters tall and ordinary ladders and hooks can't compare to it. That's why we can't do anything. But now that we have the magic crystal cannons, this steel wall is nothing. Zai looked at him coldly, making Baiming Huan's hair stand on end. Lord Zai, what's wrong? Humph. Zai sneered, I can see that you have the cultivation of a god emperor, but you're actually so weak. How can a mere mortal realm's iron wall stop you? Lord Zai, get out of my way. Zai looked at him coldly. I'll help you flatten this steel wall. If you can't break through the Broken Cauldron realm's defense line in one day, then kill yourself. Lord Yu, before Baiming Huan could finish, Zai had already regrown his 4 wings and flew towards the steel wall. He stood on the river and took out his sword, pointing it at the wall. Zai gave a devilish smile and laughed. Ants building break? Buzz. Rays of light that soared into the sky gathered together. In the blink of an eye, a huge wheel appeared beneath Midnight's feet. It was actually a divine wheel. That's right, the unique ability of an emperor god with 90 levels of Grotto Heaven Great Circle. Divine wheel. On the city wall, Feng Jixing and the others felt a strong sense of oppression. Looking from afar, the person on the river had already slashed out with his sword. His divine wheel whizzed over. Be careful. Without another word, Feng Jixing also struck out with a dimensional storm. However, it was clear that he was unable to contend against a divine wheel. Chu Chu bellowed and raised his hand to summon his strongest power. The trees on the ground were uprooted and formed a natural barrier. Scholar Ling was anxious. He took out a heavenly book and shouted, Don't resist. You can't. Follow me and move. The sky suddenly lit up, and the heavenly book of the law of space brought everyone away from this section of the city wall. After moving about 500 meters away, everyone looked back and saw an extremely tragic scene. The steel wall that was nearly 300 meters long collapsed in an instant and was directly razed to the ground by the opponent's spirit wheel. Countless imperial soldiers on the city wall and inside the city had already been turned into flesh and blood, and most of them had been turned into ashes. It's a divine wheel. Scholar Ling frowned. Chu Chu remained silent. Feng Jixing gritted his teeth and said, Damn the Western Heaven realm. Did they send someone again? Scholar Ling said, To be able to use a divine wheel, it must be at least a great perfection god emperor at the 90th Grotto Heaven stage. This is really troublesome. The steel wall most likely can't hold on anymore. No, we must hold on. Feng Jixing's eyes were bloodshot. I can't let Her Highness Yin and you see us abandoning the Empire's last line of defense. Even if I die here, I won't allow it. So how often can you use your divine wheel? It depends on your cultivation. Ordinary great perfection god emperors can use their divine wheel once every 4 hours. If they use it too frequently, their cultivation will be damaged. 4 hours. That's enough. Feng Jixing carried his blades and flew up. He stood in the air above the broken city wall and shouted, What are you waiting for? Block the gap and resist them. Magic crystal cannons, magic crystal crossbows, arrow boxes. Don't save ammunition for me. Fire. The resistance on the city wall became more intense. Luo Yu led the infantry and cavalry to form a human wall around the broken city wall. They fought with the Flowing Spirit Army and the God Yi Army who were trying to break into the defensive line. Above the river, Zai frowned. The Qin army's tenacity was beyond his imagination. Beside him, the 3 battle angels Duo La, Luo Fei and Duo Li flew over. Duo La smiled and said, Sir Zai, the Qin army's courage is commendable. It's a pity that they are too weak. Thanks to Sir Zai's attack, I think our army will be able to break through their defensive lines soon. Zai snorted and did not say anything. He was a strange person. His arrogance was even higher than Duo La's. 20 miles away, the 60,000 soldiers entered the unicorn forest. Returning to the old land made everyone feel a myriad of emotions. Qin Yin closed her eyes. Her eyelashes trembled slightly. She muttered, The battle is very intense. The steel protective wall has already been damaged in many places. Her cultivation was very high. Ever since she obtained the eyes of blazing light, she had relied on her spiritual perception. Hence, her spiritual perception was much more sensitive than others of the same cultivation. Just from the tremors and auras coming from the ground, she could basically determine the situation of the battlefield. Lin Muyu gently stroked Taksha's mane, telling her not to be so anxious. They were indeed getting closer and closer to the battlefield. Looking into the distance, they could even see the rising smoke in the sky. That was the masterpiece of the magic crystal cannons. Let's hope they can withstand it, Jin Yifan said. At that moment, Su Jiantao galloped over on his horse. He said respectfully, "Your Highnesses, we just received news from our scouts. Baiming Huan's 300,000 soldiers are almost all out. There are only about 20,000 soldiers and 50,000 backup soldiers left behind. These backup soldiers are basically the surrendered soldiers or citizens of the empire. They don't have much fighting power." "You want to raid the food camp?" Lin Muyu asked with a smile. "Yes." Su Jiantao said, "Food is the foundation of an army. An army of 300,000 soldiers consumes at least 1 million kilograms of food every day, and at least 500,000 kilograms of vegetables. The food of the Qinji Empire is basically looted from Winterfrost City and the nearby cities, so it won't be much. As long as we burn their food, they won't be able to fight for long. Once they have the intention to retreat, our army can pursue them." Lin Muyu smiled. Su Jiantao seemed to have matured into a true general who could take charge of an area by himself. Which famous general did not plan for their rations all day long? That was a basic quality of life. "Tell me, how are you going to raid them?" Su Jiantao said, "We can't send too many people. 5,000 light cavalrymen will be enough. We'll split up from here and bring along some kindling. We'll rely on the war horses to swim across the river. However, we must restrain the enemy on the main battlefield. Otherwise, these 5,000 people will be easily hunted down by the Dragon Knights or Godly State experts." "Don't worry." Lin Muyu raised her eyebrows and said, "Xiaoyin, Xiaoxi and I will go to the main battlefield to keep the enemy busy. You and Wei Chou will lead 5,000 light cavalries there. Listen to my orders. Don't come back. After burning their granaries, immediately head east and burn all their food teams and supplies. It will take at least 5 days to get to Winterfrost City from here. Since Baiming Huan dares to come, I will starve his 100,000 men to death." As she said that, Lin Muyu pulled out a token arrow from a guard's hand and said, "Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, listen to my orders. I will allow you two to act according to the situation. Once you enter the east of the river, I will not give you any orders anymore. You two can act on your own and cause as much damage as you can to their rear. Don't worry about anything. In this battle, not only will I crush the Qinji Empire on the river, I will also make them suffer heavy casualties on their way back from Cangnan Province to Lingdong Province." "Yes, Your Highness." The two generals knelt down together. After receiving the token arrow, they immediately chose their men and left. Meanwhile, Lin Muyu looked into the distance and said, "Speed up the march. The main battlefield needs our strength. Also, where is Xiling's secret weapon?" "In the middle of the army, led by dozens of wild warriors." Tang Xiaoxi smiled and said, That's good. Although the secret weapon might not be of real use, it could at least deter the Celestial Pole continent, right?" In the afternoon, the 50,000 men under Lin Muyu finally reached the steel wall. Looking from afar, the steel wall had already collapsed for a long time, and the two sides were engaged in a close combat under the wall. Roar, roar, roar! Among the rubble, the roars of the tiger leopard cavalry were very ear-piercing. After tearing apart a group of Imperial soldiers, they immediately rushed toward the back of the unicorn forest. That was the camp for the wounded soldiers, and it was also the temporary location of the spiritual medicine department where Chu Yao was. Lin Muyu immediately pulled out the Shenyuan sword and shouted, "Kill them! Don't let them get close to the camp for the wounded soldiers. Duke Fan, Aunt Lien, you two immediately lead the main force to reinforce Big Brother Feng Jixing." Amidst the sound of hooves, Lin Muyu led a group of elite cavalrymen and rushed over. The Shenyuan sword was very sharp, and it emitted many sword energies. In the blink of an eye, she killed a group of tiger leopard cavalry single-handedly. By the time Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi arrived with the banished army, the army of nearly 3,000 tiger leopard cavalry had already fallen apart. "Kill them." In the distance, another group of Tianji army broke through the defensive line and rushed over. There were over 10,000 cavalrymen and heavy cavalrymen, and they rushed over majestically. "Xiaoyin," Lin Muyu said in a low voice, "it's time to use your power." Qin Yin suddenly left her original position and flew into the sky in the next moment. She opened the eyes of flaming dawn, and the enemies on the ground were instantly set ablaze. Those cavalrymen and heavy cavalrymen didn't dare to look directly at the eyes of flaming dawn. They were dumbfounded as if their souls had been electrocuted. Dozens of seconds later, the heavy cavalrymen of the Longdan army camp swept across the battlefield like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. On the city wall, Feng Jixing and the others saw the scene in the distance. Feng Jixing couldn't help but tremble with excitement. He laughed and said, "Brothers, Her Highness the Empress is back. Her Highness Yin is back. She is fighting side by side with us." Everyone raised their weapons and shouted. Their morale was instantly raised. Chapter 925. The steel wall continued to collapse under the roar of the magic crystal cannons. The gap was getting bigger and bigger. In the blink of an eye, the more than 50,000 people brought back by Lin Muyu and Qin Yin had all gone to block the gap. Meanwhile, the hundreds of thousands of people led by Feng Jixing, Qin Xiaoli, Qin Yin and others were also fighting with the enemy in the city. The entire defense line of the steel wall was no longer organized. It was completely like a pot of boiling soup. The only order was probably the thousands of people personally led by Feng Jixing and Lin Muyu. Under Feng Jixing's order, nearly 10 different-sized Qinghuan battle formations were gathered at the gap of the city to resist the attack of the Tianji Empire's army. Meanwhile, Lin Muyu led thousands of iron hooves to attack the enemy who crossed the steel wall wantonly like a sharp knife. They strangled the powerful enemies who were besieging the city from inside and outside. In the sky, Qin Yin held the star sword and spread her wings behind her. She led the 3 battle angels, Terralin, Lake and Zhou Shimin, to kill the dragon knights of the Tianji Empire. In the blink of an eye, at least 7 to 8 dragon knights were killed by the eyes of blazing dawn. In addition to the roaring sound of the machines behind them, 2 chariots followed the footsteps of Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi under the protection of the army of the Land of Exile. They launched artillery attacks at the shield formation of the Tianji Empire in the distance. Swoosh! The sound of the explosion seemed to have come from underground, and the low rumble was deafening in the blink of an eye. It was the particle cannon, the only high-tech cannon in the banished land that had been preserved in perfect condition. Unfortunately, this was the only one left, otherwise it would have been of great use. "Everyone get on the city wall and shoot at your targets." A leader shouted, "We have pledged allegiance to the Dark Moon Queen. It's time to bleed for the Queen." In the blink of an eye, hundreds of experts from the Land of Exile rushed up the city wall with origin guns and sniper rifles in hand. They had all changed into the armor of the Qin Empire, but their weapons were different. The soldiers on the city wall were all shocked. They gave way and allowed these freaks to help defend the city wall. Soon, gunshots rang out one after another from the city wall. The experts from the Land of Exile only aimed at the generals of the Tianji Empire who were commanding the attack. They even shot the Kiliarchs and captaincy who were 700 to 800 meters away. In the blink of an eye, the pressure on the defensive line within several hundred meters had collapsed. The Tianji army who had lost their commanders were like headless flies. They were captured and killed one by Feng Jixing's net. Boom. With another 2 loud explosions, the wall between the 2 gaps was also razed to the ground by the magic crystal cannons. The Imperial soldiers on the city wall were almost vaporized by the power of the magic crystal cannons. It was too horrible to look at. In this way there was a gap as long as 1,000 meters in the steel wall. It was a bit scary. In the distance the bugle sounded. It was the signal of the Tianji Empire to attack. Countless beast cavalrymen and heavy cavalrymen swam across the water on their mounts. Dozens of dragon knights flew in the air to cover them. In the blink of an eye, they formed a battle formation of at least 50,000 people. This was also the most powerful attack the Tianji Empire could gather in the chaos. Charge! A general of the Divine Cloth Army who had lost an arm roared loudly. The army surged forward like a tide, constantly attacking the Qinghuan battle formation that Feng Jixing had set up. Hence, in less than 10 minutes, it was like a tsunami crashing against a low dam. After all, the Qinghuan battle formation was formed by manpower. How could a battle formation of 2,000 people block 50,000 people? When the Qinghuan battle formation was completely destroyed, it meant that the biggest gap in the steel wall was also lost. Bastard! Feng Jixing descended from the sky with his dual blades. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. He consecutively slashed out dozens of times, causing the cyclone to expand. There were no living people within dozens of meters of him, but it still couldn't stop the enemy's charge. His eyes were bloodshot and he had used up a lot of his divine power. He shouted, "Ayu, they're about to break through the defense line." In the distance, Lin Muyu waved the Shenyuan sword and came over with thousands of troops. She said, "I know. Use the magic crystal crossbows and the tomes of heaven to kill them. They're all used up." The shells of the magic crystal cannons are almost used up. Damn, Lin Muyu complained secretly. She never thought that the Qin Empire would run out of supplies after only half a day of the enemy's general attack. Now they could only rely on manpower. As long as they blocked the gap and relied on the long-range sniping of the troops from the exile land brought by Qin, they could defeat the main force of the Tianji Empire. After all, they were on an expedition. If they couldn't take down the enemy after a long time, the morale of the army would be in chaos. Lin Muyu's voice was deep. While leading the cavalry of the Longdan army camp to charge, he concentrated his divine power into his voice line and shouted in a low voice, "All soldiers of the Empire who can still move, take your weapons and join me, Lin Muyu's battle formation. Let's charge together. Even if we die on the battlefield, we will never be bullied again." The appeal of his roar was so strong that Lin Muyu's reputation in the Imperial Army could be said to be like the sun at high noon. It had even surpassed Feng Jixing's. Lin Muyu was the real king in the hearts of the soldiers of the Empire. What an honor it was to follow the Qin Emperor Lin Muyu to charge and break through enemy lines. Even if they died, were defeated, or ended up disabled, at least their lives would not be in vain. At least when they talked to their grandchildren in old age, they could proudly say that they had once followed the Imperial Martial God to charge and break through enemy lines. Therefore, the defeated, injured, and disordered soldiers of the Empire picked up their weapons one after another. They looked for war horses and shields to arm themselves. Then, like a trickle of water, they gathered around the Longdan army camp. Even many wounded soldiers in the wounded barracks had already picked up their spears and jumped on their horses to join the battle. More and more people gathered, and in the blink of an eye, they had gathered into a battle formation of nearly 50,000 people and rushed straight to the enemy. As they got closer and closer to the enemy, the roars of the tiger leopard cavalry continued. Lin Muyu knew that the enemy in front of him was one of the most elite armies of the Tianji Empire. It was a gathering of the best of the Shin'i army and the Liuji army. Buzz. The Xianyuan sword, the divine path sword, was stained with a lot of blood, but now it was like a holy sword fighting for freedom and dignity. The clanging sound was endless, and as Lin Muyu concentrated his divine power, it shone brightly. As he waved it, he directly struck a tyrannical chaos of the common people, sweeping the turf and soil towards the enemy. For a moment, the enemy was badly mutilated, and people and horses were thrown off their feet. Nature of nature. After the chaos of the common people, Lin Muyu immediately raised his left arm and raised his hand to strike the elephant wheel shuttle. With a swoosh, the bottom of the elephant wheel cut through the ground and rushed forward, directly creating a vacuum in the battle formation of the tiger leopard cavalry. All the enemies along the way were turned into corpses. At this moment, Lin Muyu was like a killing god in the mortal world. Catasaurus, come out and help the battle. Along with the roar, the little dragon shook its head and appeared. As soon as it appeared, it sprinkled a dragon's breath in the battle formation, burning a group of beast cavalry to death. Then it raised its neck and roared. The majesty of the divine dragon was displayed, and the group of tiger leopard cavalry almost stopped in their tracks. The tiger leopard cavalry was just the king of the jungle, but the little apple was the noble king of all beasts. The sound of collisions did not stop. In the blink of an eye, the tens of thousands of people led by Lin Muyu clashed with the enemy's 50,000 people. Dust flew everywhere. When two sides met on a narrow path, the brave would win. Whoever was the first to retreat would be the loser. Both sides wanted to be the winner, so this achievement of 1,000 years would inevitably be paved with corpses and lives. Above the city, Feng Jixing wielded his twin sabers with an ashen face. He strode in front of a dozen magic crystal cannons and shouted in a low voice, "Why aren't you firing? What are you waiting for?" Achillearchus' face was covered in blood and sweat. He cupped his fists and said, "Your Highness, the cannons are too hot. They need at least 30 minutes to cool down. Otherwise, the temperature will be enough to directly detonate the magic crystal cannons. Moreover, we only have 3 magic crystal cannons left. We are truly powerless. Your Highness, please investigate. This is a battlefield. Don't use such cowardly words to explain to me." Feng Jixing was indeed swift and decisive. He shouted to the people behind him, "Stargazer, supply the magic crystal cannons you brought with you to them. I will cool down these magic crystal cannons." "Yes, Your Highness." Stargazer nodded. Zhang Wei quickly raised his hand and brought out the last magic crystal cannons in the Imperial Army's inventory. Feng Jixing carried the azure dragon saber and came to the side of the magic crystal cannons. He roared in a low voice and circulated the law of ice to cool down the cannons. However, he also knew that he couldn't cool them down too quickly. Otherwise, the steel of the magic crystal cannons might not be able to withstand such a degree of cold and hot exchange. After nearly a minute, the magic crystal cannons were no longer burning hot. Feng Jixing stretched out his hand and pointed at the gap in the steel wall on the right. He said, "Look, they are all people from the Tianji Empire. Her Highness Yin and Princess She have all escaped from the Dragon Knights. Immediately open fire with all your might. Kill as many people as you can." Yes. The cannons roared. More than a dozen mushroom clouds rose from the gap in the steel wall that was nearly a kilometer long. Shock waves swept out in all directions. Without the protection of the Dragon Imperial Battle Ring, the Tianji Empire's army was only made of flesh and blood. They were blown to pieces and it was a tragic sight. Again, continuous cannons. Feng Jixing said loudly, "Her Highness Yu is fighting a bloody battle at the bottom of the city. All you can do is to reduce the pressure. This is a battle for your dignity as artillerymen." Within 5 minutes, 3 consecutive cannons were already the limit that the magic crystal cannons could withstand. At the same time, the Imperial Army's last stock of cannons was almost used up. At this moment, Qin Yin's voice sounded in Feng Jixing's ears. "General Feng, be careful. Someone is coming." In the distance, a group of God State warriors flew straight over. At the front was a middle-aged man with 2 pairs of holy wings on his back. The sharp sword in his hand shone brightly. Behind him were Baiming Huan, Dora, Lin Tongtian, Luo Fei and the others. Finally, the Tianji Empire's strongest force was going to be mobilized. Feng Jixing couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Damn it! Is that the Radiant Angel Midnight? Terralyn looked into the distance in disbelief. That's me, Terralyn. Midnight actually heard Terralyn's words from afar. With an indifferent expression on his face, he said, "Terralyn, you are the successor of the Radiant clan. Don't be stubborn. Do you know that you are helping our enemy?" "Sheen is my friend." Terralyn slowly pulled out her sharp sword and said, "There is nothing wrong with fighting for a friend." Midnight shouted coldly in a low voice, "In that case, I will no longer care about my friendship with your father. I will help the Western Heaven Realm to clean up the mess." The golden light soared into the sky, and an invisible force spread out, causing everyone to be shocked. "It's a spirit wheel." Lake's voice was trembling. After all, he was only a god king. In the face of such a powerful spirit wheel, the fear came from the bottom of his heart and couldn't be suppressed. Chapter 926. "Let me do it." Qin slowly opened her arms and suddenly, a total of 13 golden god-binding chains emerged from her body. They encircled her body like elegant ribbons. The flames in the eyes of the blazing dawn flickered and fused with the god-binding chains. Then, a dazzling ice crystal was formed in front of her. It was a huge dragon crystal. Qin activated almost all the power of the Law of Light's defensive martial technique. She knew that if she couldn't block this attack, everyone would die. She would die. Tang Xiaoxi, Feng Jixing, Terralyn, Lake and the others would all die. No one could escape from this joke of fate. Wasn't it a joke for a king god to challenge a consummate realm god emperor? Very good. Zai sneered. Shi Yan's sister is indeed extraordinary. I will release you from purgatory today. Sheen, your mistake is that you shouldn't be Qin Yin. Boom. The huge spirit will cover the sky and the earth. It had the momentum to destroy everything. In terms of destructive power and range of power, Zai's spirit wheel couldn't be compared to the spirit wheel Lin Muyu used before. It was stronger, bigger and more powerful. Qin Yin gritted her teeth. Her face turned pale. The moment the spirit wheel collided with the celestial dragon crystal, she felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. She felt a chill in her heart. She realized that the celestial dragon crystal couldn't block the spirit wheel at all. Although her light divine power was the purest divine power, she was only a king god after all. Boom. The celestial dragon crystal began to collapse. However, at least half of the spirit wheel's power remained. Even if this half of the divine power swept across the entire city wall, Tang Xiaoxi, Terralyn, and the others would be fatally injured. Qin Yin didn't hesitate anymore. With a shout, her body was bathed in flames. She rushed into the spirit wheel with the star's sword in her hand. "Xiaoyin!" Tang Xiaoxi screamed hysterically. "Qin!" Terralyn stood there in a daze, unable to do anything. However, the movement of the divine wheel slowed down because of Qin Yin's power. The next moment, the divine wheel suddenly surged with countless sword lights. Terralyn's beautiful eyes widened. It's Lady Xian's 7 strikes. Split. That's right, Qin Yin exerted all her strength to execute the 7 slashes that Shi Yan had taught her. First slash split. Sparks flew everywhere and his divine wheel trembled slightly. Second slash judgment. Golden light tore through the sky. His divine wheel was on the verge of collapse. The third slash annihilation. The power of the divine wheel was finally exhausted. Countless beams of sword light pierced through the edges of the divine wheel and completely destroyed this life-threatening wheel. However, it also brought with it a golden rain of blood. When Qin Yin was ejected from the divine wheel, she was already covered in wounds. Xiaoyin. Tang Xiaoxi was the fastest. She shot out like lightning and hugged Qin Yin in the air. However, she saw that Qin Yin's face was frighteningly pale. The divine wall around her had already been swallowed and destroyed by the power of the divine wheel. Cuts appeared on her fair skin. If it wasn't for her profound cultivation, she would have been obliterated by the divine wheel. Xiaoxi, be careful. Qin Yin held Tang Xiaoxi's hand and forcibly used her grain's god power to slide down the city wall with Tang Xiaoxi. However, her grip became tighter and tighter, not letting Tang Xiaoxi go out. The opponent was too strong. Qin Yin's action was no different from not wanting Tang Xiaoxi to be in danger. However, in the air, Zai, Dora, Baiming Huan and the others still came. Zai had only used up 30% of his divine power when he used the divine wheel, so he still had his combat ability. Dora spread her 4 wings behind her. Holding the Tig's spear, she smiled and said, Tang Xiaoxi, do you want to fight me again? Xiaoxi, no. Qin Yin held Tang Xiaoxi's hand tightly. However, she was shocked to find that Tang Xiaoxi's appearance was changing. She had already entered the 9-tailed transformation, and her beautiful face had become even more bewitching. It was not just the 9-tailed transformation, but the second stage of the transformation, the demon god transformation. Tang Xiaoxi's jade-like palm instantly slipped out of Qin Yin's hand. She smiled gently and said, Xiaoyin, everyone is fighting with their lives on the line. How can I hide in the back alone? You should quickly rest and recover your strength. If I can't beat them, I still have to rely on you. As she spoke, Tang Xiaoxi transformed into a beam of light and shot into the sky. She fought with Dora and the flames surged continuously. The two of them were evenly matched and the winner would not be decided in a short period of time. However, Zai held his light sword and stood proudly in the air. He said, Does this mean that I have no opponents? In your dreams. A handsome figure instantly appeared in front of him. It was Scholar Ling. Soon the other 3 figures gathered together. Ice Palm, Fire Fist and Behemoth King had all arrived. Su Hao gently waved the paper fan in his hand and said with a smile, Zai, you are the radiant angel of the heaven realm. We, the 4 peerless white leaves of the mortal realm, are fighting you 4 against 1. It's not like we are bullying you, right? Zai couldn't help but laugh out loud. The few of you are the 4 peerless white leaves that Lin Mu relies heavily on? That's right. Come, I also want to see how strong the people left behind by the former king of gods Fuxi of East Heaven are. Roar. Behemoth King didn't say anything. He charged over with a furious roar and punched Zai's head 3 times consecutively, forcing Zai to retreat continuously. He didn't even have time to prepare himself. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. Flames and frost attacked from both sides. Their power was extremely vigorous and domineering, making it difficult for Zai to endure. After all, he was fighting 1 against 4. Moreover, he was already injured when he pierced through the flame knot of the 7 luminaries Demon Emperor. He had just used up 30% of his power to condense the divine wheel. Even though his power was far above any of the 4 peerless white leaves, he indeed felt that he couldn't split himself into 2 in a short period of time. Luo Fei. Lake slowly rose into the air. The battle angel wings on his back spread open and a sword of light condensed in his hand. He said, We didn't have a clear winner in the chosen god trial. Why don't we have a showdown this time? You should have thought that you would die a horrible death when you followed that poisonous woman Duola. Luo Fei's expression was solemn as he raised his shield. He knew how powerful Lake was. The martial arts of the Dark Light family had its own lineage. The laws of light contained the power of darkness. Although they were despised by the gods of the Western Heaven realm, no one dared to underestimate the Dark Light family. In the second round of the chosen god trial, Lake was 3rd while Luo Fei was 4th. The 2 were originally evenly matched. Come Lake, let me see the power of the Dark Light family. As you wish. Lake roared angrily. His long sword struck Luo Fei's shield with the power of Dark Light. It was indeed tyrannical. The 2 of them turned into a ball of flames and fell from the sky. They fell directly into the Paddy River. The river water surged and swirled. Rays of light shone on the surface of the river. The battle under the water was obviously extraordinary. Chu Chu, Feng Jixing, and Ouyang Yen looked at each other. This battle was about to become a battle of gods. Bai Ming Huan and Lin Tongtian looked at each other and smiled. Bai Ming Huan said, "Lord Dragon Knight Lin Tongtian, it's time for us to go. Send out all the Dragon Knights. In this battle we must kill Qin Yin, Lin Muyu, Tang Xiaoxi and Feng Jixing. We must destroy the Qin Empire." "Yes, Marshal." Dozens of Dragon Knights quickly gathered in the sky and rushed toward the city wall with Bai Ming Huan and Lin Tongtian. Qin Yin suddenly looked up. Her flaming eyes were filled with cold light. Her star sword was still trembling. She stepped on the bricks of the city wall and turned into a beam of light that shot toward Bai Ming Huan. Even though she was injured in the spirit wheel, she still chose Bai Ming Huan as her opponent. Ouyang Yen, Feng Jixing, and Chu Chu flew up one after another and fought with Lin Tongtian and the other Dragon Knights. Once the Battle of Gods began, the whole battlefield became even more chaotic. On the ground it was a battle of mortals, while in the sky, it became a battle of gods. But what was amazing was that the power of both sides was balanced, and the only one who could break this balance was naturally Lin Muyu. While leading the charge, he paid attention to the fight in the sky. The battle between Tang Xiaoxi and Dora could not be decided in a short time, but it was obvious that Tang Xiaoxi's second form was very harmful to her body, and she could not fight for long. And Qin Yin was seriously injured and would not be a match for Bai Ming Huan. So the balance of this battle was on Bai Ming Huan's side. As long as Bai Ming Huan was defeated, the morale of the Qinji Empire would naturally be disturbed. Either they did not attack, or if they attacked they had to defeat the enemy in one blow. A few minutes later, Lin Muyu suddenly disappeared from the battle horse, and the one leading the charge was the masterless treading in snow warhorse. In the sky, the Xinyuan sword's light suddenly grew brighter. Bai Ming Huan, who was fighting with Qin Yin, suddenly felt a chill around him. Even the four-dimensional space was completely blocked, and his body's movement speed became slower. "It's here." Bai Ming Huan sensed the approaching danger and hurriedly dodged. He saw the Xinyuan sword wrapped in frost fall right on the tip of his nose, and with a crack, it cut off half of the heart protection mirror on his chest. "Lin Muyu." Bai Ming Huan was furious. Lin Muyu's sword missed and her body glided in the wind. She looked down at Bai Ming Huan, sneered and growled, "Freeze!" The air froze instantly. This was a higher level of the snow ice. Bai Ming Huan was caught off guard and his body could not move at all. His whole body was frozen into a huge block of ice in the air. Lin Muyu pointed the Xinyuan sword at Bai Ming Huan and growled, "Die!" The blade shone with starlight, and the power of the seventh star roared out. Suddenly, the power of thousands of stars gathered in the air and bombarded Bai Ming Huan, washing him in blood in the wind. At the same time, the huge star power fell at a 45-degree angle toward Dao Jiang, where the Divine Cloth Army was densely packed. Boom, 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 the earth rumbled and almost everyone looked in Lin Muyu's direction. The seven glorious stars transformation had consumed at least 30% of Lin Muyu's power. Therefore, not only did she have to kill Bai Ming Huan, she also had to kill thousands of Divine Cloth Army soldiers. Only then would she be able to shake their morale. Under the super close attack, Bai Ming Huan floated in the air, his eyes lost. His chest, legs and even his forehead all had holes, which were the signs of being pierced by the star power. Bang! The body exploded. The Tianji Empire's marshal, Bai Ming Huan, had actually died on the battlefield, just like the marshal of the Blackstone Empire, Bailey Qin. Chapter 927. Bai Ming Huan is dead. Lin Muyu endured the pain from the backfire of the seven glorious stars, stood in the air holding Bai Ming Huan's collar with one hand, and carried his body in the air. For a moment, all the soldiers of the Tianji Empire on the ground were dumbfounded. Yes, that cloak was Bai Ming Huan's martial cloak. Everyone was stunned. Bai Ming Huan was an invincible god emperor. How could he die? However, Bai Ming Huan was still dead. The morale of the army was in chaos. On the ground, Situ Sen and Situ Shui led the army of the Longdan army camp to kill the enemies who had lost their will to fight. Feng Jixing also waved the flag and Luo Yu, Zhang Wei and the others led the charge. It seemed that the initiative of the war had returned to the side of the Qin Empire. Qin Yin was covered in wounds, and the star's sword in her hand was shaking slightly. But her golden red eyes of flame were staring at another figure in the air, and she shouted, "Dora, it's time for you to pay with your life." What? Dora, who was fighting with Tang Xiaoxi, hurriedly waved the bone spear to shake off Tang Xiaoxi's sharp claws. But Qin was too fast. Under the gaze of the eyes of flame, Dora felt that he had nowhere to hide. At the same time, the star's sword carried the power of the first strike of Shi Yan's 7 cuts, and instantly burst out dense sword shadows. Tang Xiaoxi took the opportunity to take a step back to catch her breath. There was a hint of exhaustion on her beautiful face. It was obvious that fighting against Dora, who was wielding 2 divine weapons, had taken too much of her demon power. "Qin, you traitor of the heaven realm!" Dora bellowed as her expression turned sinister. 4 black wings spread open on her back, and her aura was even stronger than Qin Yin's. Dora was a black-winged battle angel. The more people she killed, the stronger her bloodlust would become, and the more power her black wings would absorb. At this moment, it was only natural that her cultivation had surpassed Qin Yin's. The spear continued to stab forward, and after nearly 20 swings, Qin Yin's split strike was finally resolved. Without waiting for Dola to recover, Qin Yin directly launched the second strike of Shi Yan's 7 slashes, Judgment. Dola's murderous nature was so strong that even Qin Yin, with her kind nature, wanted to get rid of it as soon as possible. Whoosh! The dagger of time suddenly flashed and the space seemed to freeze. Qin Yin's slash speed also slowed down by more than 10 times. Dora, on the other hand, had a hint of a smile on her face. Suddenly, her figure flashed, and the sharp spear in her hand stabbed straight at Qin Yin's back. Clang! The spear directly pierced through the god wall. Just as Dora thought he had succeeded, the wild glint in his eyes grew even brighter. However, the spear could not advance any further no matter how hard he tried. That was because a strong hand had grabbed the middle of the spear. Was Lin Muyu? You? Dora could not help but groan inwardly. Let go. Lin Muyu raised her hand and swung her sword. The Shenyuan sword carried the profound energy of the 3rd star and the overwhelming righteous energy as it swept across. This tyrannical power had yet to even reach Dora, but it already made him feel extremely uncomfortable. Dora had a ruthless heart that respected the strong, so he hated the holy energy contained within the Shenyuan sword, which contained the power of heaven and earth and had compassion for all living things. If he did not let go of the spear, this arm was destined to die under the Shenyuan sword. Dora had no doubt that the person who could kill Bai Minghuan could easily kill him as well. Moreover, this sword was really too powerful. It must be a divine weapon from outside the heaven domain. Otherwise it could not have such a tyrannical aura. This kind of strength was not something that the weapons in the mortal realm could match. Whoosh! Dora hurriedly retracted his hand. Lin Muyu threw the spear backward and shouted, "Xiaoxi catch!" In the air, Tang Xiaoxi's 9 flame tails gathered together and flew away. She successfully got the spear. Taking a deep breath, she smiled gently and said, "Mu got it." As she spoke, Lin Muyu had already stood in front of Qin Yin and attacked Dora 7 or 8 times in a row. Each attack was fiercer than the last. The invisible elephant spell's aura was so overwhelming that Dora could not handle it. The Shenyuan sword's attacks also had a killing effect. Broken feathers kept flying out of Dora's 4 black wings. It was a tragic scene. Qin Yin's eyes were full of hatred. The aura of the flaming eyes was locked on Dora, making her feel like she was dying. "Brother you must kill her or she will kill more of us." Lin Muyu's attacks became even more ferocious, while Qin Yin summoned the god-binding chains and the celestial dragon crystal to assist her in battle. The 3 of them clashed in the air, and the wounds on Dora's body increased. "Luo Fei, save me!" She couldn't help but scream. However, Luo Fei did not even have the time to save himself. How could he have the leisure to save her? In the middle of the battle in the air, a person wielding an ice spear urged his dragon to charge down. He shouted, "Miss Dora, I'll cover you. Retreat quickly." The person was none other than Lin Tongtian, one of the 3 dragon riders. The ice spear shone brightly and turned into an ice wall in front of Lin Muyu and Qin Yin. Dora held the dagger of time and suddenly moved a few hundred meters away. That was the ability to accelerate time. Bang bang. Lin Muyu broke the ice wall with 2 swords. She looked at Lin Tongtian coldly and said, "We meet again." "Ah, that's right. It's a pity that I had eyes but failed to see. I didn't know that you were the Qin Emperor of the Qin Empire. If I had known, I would have killed you at all costs." Lin Tongtian's body trembled slightly. He had already used up a lot of his divine power in the previous battle. Now that he had to fend off Lin Muyu and Qin Yin, he was almost at the end of his rope. He didn't even have enough strength to flap his dragon wings. Lin Muyu looked at him coldly and said, "Do you know the consequences of letting Dora go?" "I don't know. I only know that Miss Dora is an angel from the upper realm. Our Qinji Empire is a territory of the upper realm. I have to save her. Otherwise it will bring disaster to the empire. Lin Tongtian stood on the dragon's back and looked at Lin Muyu with clear eyes. He said, Your Highness the Qin Emperor, I'm sure you don't want to let me go. In that case make your move. I know that the Lin Tongtian of today is no match for you. Moreover, you have a godly weapon that is even more powerful than the Dig's spear. Lin Muyu lowered the Shenyuan sword in her hand and said, You are an old acquaintance of Yao. I won't kill you. Take your own life. I'll leave you with a whole corpse. In that case thank you very much. Lin Tongqian's face was full of gratitude. Tang Xiaoxi and Qin Yin guarded the left and right sides of Lin Tongtian. Lin Tongtian probably couldn't even defeat one of the three, let alone all three of them. Ha! Lin Tongtian suddenly threw his head back and laughed. His voice was trembling as he said, I, Lin Tongtian, have spent my entire life killing enemies for the empire and wiping out the demon spirits. I never thought that I would die in a foreign land. Perhaps this is karma. Lin Muyu, Qin Yin, if the two of you conquer the world one day, please treat the people of the world kindly. Lin Muyu said softly, Don't worry, sir. We will. In that case I have no regrets. Tell Miss Si Kong Yao that although I, Lin Tongtian, failed her request not to attack the Shattered Cauldron world, I have been doing my duty ever since I entered the Shattered Cauldron world. I didn't kill a single commoner. I restrained my subordinates and tried my best to prevent the people from suffering. Take this as my compensation to Miss Si Kong Yao. Ah. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. I should have followed Miss to the Blackstone Empire and become a mercenary. He didn't know that the mercenary Bai Zhe was actually Lin Muyu's subordinate. Qin Yin couldn't bear to see him like this. She said, Lin Tongtian, if you have any regrets, why don't you stay in the Qin Empire? We will treat every capable general well. No. Lin Tongtian shook his head and said, I'm already getting old. I still know what shame and integrity are. A loyal subject doesn't serve two masters. We'll meet again in the next life. As he said this, the divine power in Lin Tongtian's body suddenly became chaotic. Golden light burst out and his joints and meridians exploded. Blood splattered everywhere. His cultivation dissipated in the blink of an eye and he fell to his knees on the dragon's back. His black hair turned white in an instant. Once his divine power dissipated, he naturally lost the ability to maintain his youth. Lin Tongqian's face aged rapidly and he looked towards the east with tears streaming down his face. Lin Muyu's nose turned sour. She said softly, Don't worry, my lord. I'll send someone to bring your ashes back to the celestial pole continent and hand them over to Yao. She'll bury you in your hometown. Lin Tongtian raised his head and looked at Lin Muyu. He lowered his head and fell backward. Just like that, Lin Tongtian, a dragon rider general and one of Sikong Ming's 3 disciples, committed suicide on the battlefield by destroying his meridians. Retreat. Defend the shore. The shout of the 4-winged radiant angel, Midnight, came from the sky. He shook off the beaming king and raised his palm. A ray of light shone down, forcing the other 3 members of the 4 masters of white leaves to retreat. He turned around and disappeared in the blink of an eye. If the 4-winged radiant angel wanted to leave, there weren't many people who could stop him. On the ground, the army of the Qinji Empire also retreated like the tide. However, it wasn't easy for all of them to cross the river. This was a hard-won opportunity for a counterattack. Feng Jixing and Lin Muyu wouldn't let it go. The Longdan army camp, the Imperial Guards, and the other legions counterattacked one after another. The sound of killing soared into the sky. At this time the sun had already set. After a whole day of killing, the battlefield was extremely bleak. However, it was gratifying that the Qin Empire had won a Pyrrhic victory. In the sky there were still 3 dragon knights flying around. They were covering the retreat of the ground troops and releasing sword energy into the crowd. At the same time, one of them raised his head and saw a new magic crystal cannon on the city wall. He couldn't help but raise his dragon spear and shouted, "Follow me and destroy it." However, the protector of this dragon crystal cannon was Situ Senator. However, Situ Sen didn't stop the dragon knights from coming. He just said to the artilleryman beside him, "It's done. Aim and fire." "Yes, General." The cannon was quickly calibrated and the muzzle was raised. Bang! A flame was spat out. This magic crystal cannon didn't seem to be very powerful. It exploded less than 100 meters away from the barrel. Moreover, the range of the explosion was far less than the 50 meters of the heavy magic crystal cannon. It was only 10 meters. However, one of the dragon knights had already entered the explosion range. In the shock wave, tiny stones flew out and shot into the dragon knight's body. It actually avoided the dragon imperial spiral. A miserable howl came from the sky. The people of the imperial army were dumbfounded. The magic crystal cannon had always been useless against the dragon knights. However, this cannon seemed to have hit the dragon knight. Chapter 928. Qin Xiling clapped his hands and laughed. Sure enough, it's a success. Our god-slaying cannon has succeeded. Situ Sen looked to the other side and said, Magic crystal cannon, give it a try. Yes. In the air, the god-level dragon knight that was hit hurriedly urged his dragon to escape, but it seemed that he couldn't escape the magic crystal cannon that was being calibrated on the city wall behind him. Bang! Raging flames stuck out its tongue, and suddenly there was an explosion 300 meters away. The light from the explosion of the magic crystal cannon instantly engulfed the dragon knight. Without the protection of the dragon imperial battle wheel, both the dragon knight and the dragon knight were blown to pieces. Even his divinity was probably blown up. On the city wall, a group of soldiers were dancing with joy. Looking at the enemies retreating like the tide, they suddenly felt that they had a new lease of life. The most important thing was that the Qin Empire finally had a weapon to deal with the God-State Strong, the God-Slaying Cannon. Although it was only a prototype, at least it could be used as a deterrent. The battle went on until late at night. Most of the Tianji Empire's troops had already crossed the river. Those who couldn't cross the river were either killed or captured. Jianghu was not their territory. That night, almost no one slept. Lin Muyu, Qin Yin, Tang Xiaoxi, and the others also didn't sleep. The battle was in full swing and no one could sleep. Moreover, almost everyone needed to heal. The steel wall had been blown up for nearly 5 kilometers, and there was basically no way to station troops in the city. Therefore, most of the troops were stationed in the unicorn forest behind the wall. At dawn, thousands of lights connected in the forest, and the sound of cooking could be heard everywhere. The soldiers had been fighting for a day and needed to replenish their strength. In the central tent, Chu Yao carefully applied medicine and bandaged Qin Yin's wound. She said, Your Highness, who injured you to this extent? Qin Yin closed her eyes and smiled softly. It's not someone else who injured me. I just broke into the spirit wheel. Sister Chu Yao, thank you so much. When you bandaged me, he didn't know how to control his strength. It hurt so much, Chu Yao giggled. Yu is a general, so of course he doesn't know what's important. Lin Muyu was sitting at the side, using his qi to heal Tang Xiaoxi's injuries. He realized that Tang Xiaoxi's bones would be damaged after her second transformation. If she didn't receive treatment for a long time, she would definitely become a cripple. Fortunately, his supreme divine power was of the same origin as Fuxi's divine power, and Fuxi's divine power itself had the ability to heal the divine body. Terralin, Lake, Xiangyu, Chu, Su Hao and the others also returned one by one. The battle during the day ended before dawn the next day, and the men from each battalion had also returned. When Zheng Yifan and Su Yu opened the tent door and walked in, Lin Muyu knew the results were out. Master Fan, what's the result of the calculation? Lin Muyu asked. Zheng Yifan bowed respectfully, then bowed to Qin Yin and said, Reporting to Your Highness Yu, our army lost more than 114,000 men in this battle. That's half of our military strength. So many? Tang Xiaoxi murmured. Yes. Zheng Yifan said, the enemy's military strength was originally above ours. So what's the result of the battle? We counted more than 143,000 corpses of the Tianji Empire soldiers and more than 8,000 captives. According to the number of people, the Tianji Empire still has about 150,000 soldiers in the west of Daojiang, which is 50,000 more than us. Moreover, it is said that there are still warships of the Tianji Empire in the East Sea, and they have already begun to recruit new soldiers in Lingdong province. Zheng Yifan's eyes were slightly uneasy as he said, Your Highness, if the next battle is still like this, I'm afraid that even if we annihilate the Tianji Empire's expeditionary army, there won't be more than 10,000 soldiers left in our army. Qin Yin nodded, Yes, I know. Master Fan, you've worked hard. Please take a seat. Thank you, Your Highness. Feng Jixing sat cross-legged beside Lin Muyu and asked, So what should we do next? Wait. Lin Muyu said, Su Jiantao and Wei Chou have already led 5,000 light cavalry to the enemy's rear. Let's see how much rations they can burn. Once the Tianji Empire's rations run out, they will naturally retreat without attacking. At that time we can just send our cavalry to chase after them. When their people are so hungry that they can't walk, they will naturally be defeated. Yes, then let's wait. Feng Jixing nodded, then looked up and said, Luo Yu passed down my order. All the prefectures in Sangnan province must transfer half of the stored rations to the camp of the Tianji Empire's army, so that the soldiers can eat and drink to their heart's content and recuperate. In addition, gather war horses and capture horses that get lost in the battle, the more the better. Yes, Your Highness. Also, Lin Muyu said, Luo Yu, send people to the Unicorn Forest to cut down trees and make wooden rafts, the more the better. We need to build many pontoon bridges. Once the Tianji Empire retreats, it will be time for us to chase after them. Yes, I understand. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. The injuries of Lin Muyu, Tang Xiaoxi, Qin Yin, Feng Jixing, and the others had basically recovered, but the repair work on the steel wall had not yet begun. It would only start after the battle was over. However, quite a number of civilian laborers had been recruited. Su Jiantao had guarded Sangnan province for 5 years, and he had been conscientious. Wugu City was overflowing with wealth, and the manpower and material resources could still be considered to be able to keep up. Early in the morning, a few more troops appeared on the official road. They were all private troops from Tianshu province and Yunzhong province who had heard the news. After hearing about the great victory of the steel wall, all the feudal lords from various places came to rescue the empress. In fact, everyone knew that these people were just here to get a share of the spoils and receive more rewards after the empress returned to Zetian Palace Hall. Even some of the bandit leaders brought their men down the mountains to rescue the empress. The morning tea rippled with a faint fragrance. Qin Yin held the teacup and gently took a deep breath. She couldn't help but smile and say, "It still smells the same." Shengguan Jingyue chuckled and said, "Well, the tea in Wugu City is not much different from the tea in Lanyan City. It's good that Your Highness likes it." However, Feng Jixing was somewhat frowning. Although Qin Yin couldn't see it, she could feel it. "General Feng, what's wrong?" She was still used to calling Feng Jixing General Feng because this was how he used to be. Feng Jixing cupped his fists respectfully and said, "Your Highness, there are more and more troops in the Unicorn Forest. The feudal lords from Tianshu Province, Sangnan Province and Lingbei Province have all taken out their family assets. This Unicorn Forest is filled with chaotic troops, but they don't obey orders. I sent Luo Yu and Zhang Wei to recruit their troops. The feudal lords from various places made different excuses, but none of them were willing to listen to my orders." Qin Yin nodded and didn't say anything. Su'er said, "When the conscription order was issued, we also thought of this result, but we didn't expect it to develop to this point. Now, the Imperial Army in the Unicorn Forest only has a total of 100,000 people, while the feudal lords have close to 300,000 people. They are divided into hundreds of feudal armies, and the largest of them has 40,000 people. However, they are all a motley crew and no one is willing to be the vanguard." Zhen Yifan said, "The laissez-faire of power has already made these feudal lords not know what a ruler is." Qin Yin bit her red lips and asked, "Xiaoxi, what do you think?" Tang Xiaoxi put down her teacup and said, "I went to see the feudal lords' armies this morning, and it's not too much to call them a motley crew. Many of the troops are even made up of farmers. In order to gather a strong army, the feudal lords have gone around snatching people, and there's even a rule of drawing 1 out of 3. That's not all. There should be about 2 million feudal lords' armies in the entire country, but most of them are farmers. These people should be discharged from the army and returned to farming. Otherwise, if the land can't grow food, how can the empire continue to fight?" Then what does Xiaoxi mean? We have to think of a way to not only appease the feudal lords, but also make them reduce the number of troops. Otherwise, if this goes on for a long time, I'm afraid we'll fall into chaos. Feng Jixing made a cutting gesture. "In my opinion, it's better to cut the Gordian knot and slaughter all the feudal lords. We'll take their elite troops and disperse the rest of the troops." "That won't do." Tang Xiaoxi shook her head. "Your method may work in troubled times, but once we expel the bandits from the celestial pole continent, we'll be ruling the country. If we use General Feng's method to rule the country, Xiao Yin definitely won't be able to be the empress." Qin Yin pursed her red lips and said, "Actually, it doesn't matter if I don't become the empress as long as I can accompany you and you." "Please don't." Tang Xiaoxi was a little anxious and said, "Xiao Yin, you must not have such an idea. If you don't become the empress, I'm afraid the world will really be in chaos. At that time, all the feudal lords will proclaim themselves as kings and fight each other. The Qin Empire will really be finished." Alright then. I wonder what you thinks. Where is he? He went out early in the morning. I heard he went to spy on the military. Suyu couldn't help but frown. Suyu couldn't help but frown. A dignified marshal of the three armies going out to spy on military affairs is simply child's play. When he comes back we must give him a good warning. A crack appeared in the tent, and Lin Muyu stepped out and said with a smile, "What does Aunt Luo want to warn me about?" Suyu pursed her lips. "What did you spy on?" The Flowing Harmony Army and the Divine Cloth Army have already started packing their supplies. If nothing unexpected happens they will definitely retreat within 3 days. In addition, there was no smoke in their camp at noon yesterday. If nothing unexpected happens they have already run out of food, so they directly skipped their lunch. They ran out of food? Feng Jixing asked excitedly. Yes, it should be. Lin Muyu asked with a smile. Big brother Feng, how many cavalry soldiers do we have? Don't worry. Feng Jixing said, I annihilated 60,000 wolf soldiers in Yunzhong province, and most of their mounts are well preserved. It can be said that as long as our main force of 100,000 soldiers can ride horses, we will have 100,000 cavalry. That's great. I saw that there are almost no war horses in the stables of the Tianji Empire. They started slaughtering the war horses a day ago. I reckon that in another 2 days they will all become infantry. If nothing unexpected happens, Wei Chou and Su Jintao's operation behind the enemy's back has already been effective. The time to counterattack will also come in 1 or 2 days. Yes. Man proposes but God disposes. Sometimes, no matter how scheming people were, the factors of the right time and the right place would not change because of people's will. Although the Qinji Empire was strong, it always lagged behind others and would eventually be defeated. Chapter 929. At night the sky was filled with stars. The fog of the summer night slowly descended and turned into dew. The camp was damp, and the dew on the branches and leaves kept splashing down, making pitter-patter sounds on the tent as if it was raining. Gong Xiangming stood quietly under the lantern, raising his head to look at the stars in the sky. He did not speak. Whoosh! The tent door opened and Castor, the commander of the Flowing Dawn Army, appeared. Why aren't you sleeping, advisor? He asked with a smile. Gong Xiangming nodded and smiled. How can I sleep? Why aren't you sleeping, commander? I can't sleep either. Castor rubbed his nose and said, Have you heard the news, advisor? The Eternal Night sect, the Blood Cloak sect, and the other sects have all surrendered to the Four-Winged Angel, Zai. The entire Divine Cloak Army is no longer under our control. It's as if it has become the private army of the Radiant Angel. This is not good. What else can we do? Gong Xiangming seemed to be in a daze. With the death of the marshal, we are without a leader. Neither you nor I have enough prestige to command the 3 armies. Even Lord Dragon Rider Lin Tongtian died in battle, and that Dora has joined Zai. At this moment they are the true rulers. We can only take things one step at a time. The rear supply route has been cut off time and time again. The light cavalry of the Longdan army camp sometimes gathers and sometimes scatters. They come and go unpredictably and have already burned more than 20 of our granaries. We can't even feed our soldiers a full meal anymore. The war horses have been eaten in 3 days, and it will take at least 10 days to walk to Winterfrost City. What can these 150,000 soldiers eat to last 10 days? Gong Xiangming was silent. You are the advisor. You should at least say something, right? Castor said calmly. All right. Gong Xiangming looked up at Castor and asked, Commander, do you think we are humans or beasts? Nonsense, of course we are humans. Then I am at my wit's end. Then. Castor frowned and said, What if we are beasts? Then there is a way to feed the army. What way? Eating human flesh. Gong Xiangming's voice was soft but firm. Those who achieve great things don't bother with trifles. From here to Winterfrost City, although the land is barren and there are few cities and towns, there are still some villages. Send our people into the villages to capture the civilians of the Qin Empire and eat them. That way the army may be able to make it back to Winterfrost City. Castor instantly broke out in a cold sweat. If they followed Gong Xiangming's plan, the Tianji Empire would no longer be able to establish itself in the Shattered Cauldron realm in the future. After all, who would support a man-eating army? His eyelids twitched violently as he said, Military advisor, this is simply heartless. If we really do this, the Tianji Empire can forget about ruling over the Shattered Cauldron realm. Hee, Commander, do you still think the Tianji Empire can defeat the Qin army? What do you mean? There are at least 800,000 troops recruited by our empire and Lord Zhang Cheng's troops. Why can't we win this war? Gong Xiangming took a deep breath and said, because the Empress of the Qin Empire, Qin Yin, is back. With the loyalty of the people, and with the famous generals like Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Su Jiantao, and Wei Chou, how can we fight the Qin Empire? Even if we take a step back, we can only rely on the Dragon Knights. But now they have giant cannons that can kill the Dragon Knights. They are ahead of us in terms of weapons. If we continue to stay in the Shattered Cauldron realm, we will only be a burden to our homeland and the Tianji Empire. At that time, if the new emperor of the Celestial Empire, Qin Yu, uses force, I'm afraid even our homeland will be in the hands of others. Castor felt a chill down his spine. Military advisor, are you serious? What else is there to hide from you? Gong Xiangming turned around and patted Castor's shoulder lightly. He smiled and said, previously we may have had some disagreements in terms of strategy and caused some misunderstandings. But now there are no gaps at all. Commander, don't think that we are the victors anymore. The expeditionary army has already been defeated. If we continue to be stubborn, we will only push the Tianji Empire to the edge of a cliff. After all, the Tianji Empire is different from the Blackstone Empire. Our territory is vast and the people are rich. It is enough to compete with the Celestial Empire. We don't have to bet all our bets on the Shattered Cauldron realm. After all, in terms of military force and strategy, we have lost to the Qin Empire. Castor frowned. Military advisor, do you think we have lost to Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing in terms of strategy? Yes. Gong Xiangming admitted. We killed the enemy with an absolute advantage in military force, but we suffered a crushing defeat. At least half of the responsibility of military strategy and command has to be borne. Then what do we do now? Haven't we already decided to retreat? Commander, you can send 10,000 people into the villages and towns in the rear to capture people to make food. Then you can leave 50,000 elites to persuade the Godly Yi army to help us fight. We can camp every 20 miles and retreat step by step to prevent the Qin army from chasing after us. In this way, maybe we can return to Winterfrost City alive. Well, I got it. Thank you for your advice, military advisor. A ferocious smile appeared at the corner of Castor's mouth. In the battle a few days ago, we captured more than 2,000 soldiers of the Qin Empire. It's just right. Let's make them into food first. Gong Xiangming was silent. From a military point of view, eating people was right. But from a moral point of view, the Tianji army was gradually becoming a beast. The morale of the army would change sooner or later. It was just that a reckless man like Castor did not understand such a change. The next morning, the soldiers of the Liuji army got up one after another, ready to break camp and retreat. But the meal before the retreat made many people vomit, because they found human fingers, legs, and other body parts in the soup pot. Unknowingly, the army rations had changed from grains to human flesh. Many people refused to eat it, and many people vomited after eating or drinking a mouthful of soup. Castor held the soup bowl and looked at the people coldly. He drank the soup in one gulp and shouted in a low voice, "If you don't eat, you won't have the strength to march. If you want to leave here alive, then eat. Eat as much as you can. Otherwise, stay here and become the food of the Qin army. Let me tell you, the meat in the soup pot is the meat of the enemy. We are not afraid of the living Qin army, let alone the dead ones. Eat the meat and then you can go back to your hometown alive." Many of the soldiers cried and chewed as they cried. Gong Xiangming, dressed in a long robe, stood quietly among a group of strategists. His face was livid. He did not eat anything, but he was so hungry that his eyes almost went blurry. Break camp and retreat. The bugle horn sounded. The 150,000 soldiers of the Tianji Empire finally retreated. In the west of Daojiang, behind a dilapidated steel wall, a scout of the empire entered the main tent and said respectfully, "They have retreated." "That's great." Feng Jixing slammed the table and said, "Prepare to give chase immediately." The scout's face did not look too good. He said, "There's one more thing." "Oh, what is it?" "Say it," Lin Muyu said. The scout gritted his teeth and said, "Our people found out that they killed all the captives and used them as food last night. More than 2,000 people of the empire who were captured, all died for the empire." "Beasts, they are a bunch of beasts." Jianghu roared. Qin Yin's delicate body trembled slightly. She clenched her fists tightly. The golden flames between her eyelashes became even colder. Lin Muyu gently held her hand and said softly, "War is like this, we have seen a lot of such things over the years." "I know, but those soldiers of the empire should not die like this. They will rest in peace because we will avenge them." Lin Muyu's words were sonorous. She said, "Since they are out of food, they will try their best to get food. Bring me the map and see which towns are on the way to Winter Frost City. We must reinforce these towns as soon as possible. We cannot let the people of the Empire continue to become food for the enemy." "Yes." Zhen Yifan suddenly said in a low voice, "Your Highness, if we give chase, what will happen to the feudal vassal army? They have gathered nearly 400,000 men and horses, and food is also very scarce." Lin Muyu frowned. "I don't know. Does Duke Fan have any ideas on this matter?" "The feudal vassal army appears to be united, but they are actually divided. Each of them has ulterior motives. We must appease them well. Otherwise there will be chaos. In that case, Duke Fan is the Empire's god of war. Your prestige is enough to intimidate these feudal vassals. Why don't you stay behind and appease them? This way, Commander Feng Jixing and I can focus on pursuing the enemy." Zhen Yifan nodded. "Please rest assured, Your Highness Yin and Your Highness Yu. I will do my best." "Yes." Qin Yin stood up and said, "I will pursue the enemy with Commander Yu. Aunt C, you should stay behind as well and assist Duke Fan in appeasing the feudal vassals. We must be careful in this matter." Suyu cupped her fists. "Yes, Your Highness." "So, it's decided?" Feng Jixing asked. Qin Yin nodded. "Yes. Good. Tell the three armies to prepare to cross the river and pursue them." In the afternoon, countless bamboo rafts and wooden rafts were placed in the Rice River. They joined together to form a man-made pontoon bridge. War horses neighed as they crossed the river. The waves of the Rice River were turbulent, but it could not stop the pursuit of the Imperial Army. Nearly 100,000 people had crossed the Rice River in less than 4 hours. However, they could not carry heavy weapons anymore. The pontoon bridge could not bear the weight of the heavy magic crystal cannons. Before evening, the cavalry led by Qin Yin, Lin Muyu, and Feng Jixing had already caught up with the Tianji Empire's army. After a fierce battle, more than 10,000 people were beheaded. It seemed that the Tianji Empire had lost their will to fight and was unwilling to continue the battle. They only left an army to cover the rear. However, they were unlucky. They were targeted by the main force of the Qin Empire's army. At midnight, the War Eagle Scouts reported that an army of the Gadi army had gone to Longhai County. There were nearly 50,000 residents in Longhai County. Once the hungry Gadi army arrived, almost all the civilians there would become food. Lin Muyu decided to split up the army. Feng Jixing, Tang Xiaoxi, and Xiang Yu would lead the main force to continue the pursuit. Meanwhile, he and Qin Yin would lead 20,000 cavalrymen from the Longdan army camp and go straight to Longhai County. Chapter 930. It was Longhai County, which was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. There were 3 official roads leading to the periphery. Most of the civilians in the county lived by farming and hunting. Most of them were farmers and hunters. Sangnan Province had experienced many wars, but Longhai County had escaped the disaster because it was relatively hidden. They had escaped the attack of the Iha Kingdom and the slaughter of the armored demon army of the Demon Clan, but they had not escaped the baptism of the Divine Cloth Army. At this time, the city walls were filled with the Divine Clothing Army in red armor. The city was filled with cries and shouts. The entire city had been sealed off. The Divine Clothing Army was capturing people in the city. Moreover, they did not intend to cook the people immediately. Instead, they wanted to feed the group of people. As they walked, they would eat them. They even wanted to dry the meat and use it as rations. This group of Divine Cloth Army soldiers were from the Eternal Night sect. They wore red armor and black robes. Most of them were practitioners, but most of them were in the human realm, the earth realm, and the heaven realm. Without food, they would also be hungry, and they were no different from mortals. In the city, the civilians were connected by iron chains, crying. They did not know what was waiting for them, but it was obviously not good. On the square, Jin Luan, the white-haired suzerain of the Eternal Night sect, was riding on a warhorse. He looked at his subordinates coldly and said, "Finish the battle quickly. We must leave this city in 2 hours." "Yes." A Chiliarch asked, "Suzerain, I know, Commander, we have captured a lot of beautiful women. What should we do?" Jin Luan was a little angry. "You still want to kill women at this moment? You are courting death. Send my order to kill them all. We must not be dragged down by women. What we need is food. Immediately rob their granaries and use them as food for the army." "Yes." Before he could finish his words, a rider arrived. It was a messenger with a Saint Realm cultivation base. He cupped his fists and reported, "Sovereign, there are people coming from outside. There are many torches in the distance and all of them are cavalries. It seems like they are the main force of the Qin army. Main force? Jin Luan narrowed his eyes. How many people are there? About 20,000. The Qin army is too arrogant. How dare they take the initiative to attack us with 20,000 people? Don't they know that there are 30,000 Divine Cloth army in this small Longhai county? Send my order to prepare for battle. Rely on the strength of the city to repel the enemy. Open the east gate of the city. Once they are stopped, immediately retreat from the east gate. Yes. Under the moonlight, the soldiers of the Longdan army had arrived at the west gate of Longhai County. Under the moonlight, the soldiers of the Longdan army led Lin Muyu soldiers in the city. Under the city, the soldiers of Longhai had arrived. Of guards of the Longdan Longhai County. On the city wall, the soldiers of the Divine Cloth army were waiting in formation, holding bows and crossbows in their hands. One of the captains shouted, "Who are you? Are you here to die?" Lin Muyu frowned and did not answer. She just said to Situ Shui next to her, "Shui, order the magic crystal crossbow troop to fire the magic crystal crossbows. Blow up the west gate." Yes. Situ Shui smiled cheerfully. After all, Longhai County was just a remote county city. Its defense was not strong at all. The city wall was only 5 meters high, and its thickness was very average. It could be blown up by the magic crystal crossbows, let alone the magic crystal cannons. "Hey, are you deaf or mute? Answer me." The captaincy seemed to be a little impatient. However, as soon as he finished speaking, purple rays of light suddenly shot out from the enemy's battle formation. Surprisingly, they were magic crystal arrows that landed on the city wall. The miniature magic crystals tied to the arrows glowed dazzlingly, and after 3 seconds they quickly exploded. Boom, boom, boom. A series of flames appeared on the city wall. In the blink of an eye, the nearly 100 meters high wall had been razed to the ground. Charge in. Lin Muyu raised the Shenyuan sword and shouted, "Anyone who wears the uniform of the Divine Cloth army, kill them all." The cavalry quickly broke through the city wall and fought with the guards in the city. In the air, a person roared and launched a divine attack. Balls of flames blasted into the crowd of people in the Longdan army camp. Suddenly, dozens of people died. There was actually a God State expert on the other side. It was an old man with white hair. But obviously he was not worthy of respect at this time. He was just a killing maniac. "I'll take care of him." Lin Muyu jumped off the warhorse. Suddenly his aura increased a lot. He rushed forward and attacked with his long sword with the energy of the purple sun falling to the ground. "I am Jin Luan, the leader of the Eternal Night sect." "Who are you? Tell me your name." In the dark, Jin Luan could not see Lin Muyu's face at all. He could only see the golden sword in his hand. But he could not hear the answer. Crack. The Shenyuan sword was so sharp that it instantly sliced through the steel sword in Jin Luan's hand. Following the momentum, it sliced Jin Luan's head and shoulders into two. A mere godly state expert at the 28th level of Grotto Heaven was completely unable to withstand Lin Muyu's attack. "Lin Muyu?" he said softly. But he realized that Jin Luan was already dead. He was destined not to hear this sentence. The leader is dead. The leader is dead in battle. The leader was killed. The crowd was in chaos. The main force of the Divine Cloth army, which was made up of cultivators from the Eternal Night sect, seemed to have lost their backbone in an instant. Lin Muyu, who was holding the Shenyuan sword, waved her long sword like a god of death. It was as if there was no one around her. When a few captains were trying their best to maintain the momentum of defeat, another golden light bloomed in the sky. It was Qin Yin's golden wings. The eyes of the blazing dawn slowly opened, and the Divine Cloth army almost instantly lost the ability to fight. Terralin, Lake, Zhou Shimin, and other battle angels took advantage of the situation and swept across. Situ Shui, Fengshi and others on the ground quickly killed them. The God Yi army had already been defeated. Even if their cultivation level was higher than the ordinary soldiers of the Longdan army camp, these God Yi army were not real soldiers after all. When they encountered such a battle formation they would naturally panic. With the presence of gods such as Lin Muyu, Qin Yin, and Terralin, it was not surprising that they were defeated. In this way there was a chaotic battle in the city. It was not until the early morning of the next day that the battle ended. The Longdan army camp wiped out nearly half of the God Yi army with the loss of 4,000 people. Under such an advantage they still had to pay 4,000 people for killing 20,000 people. It was enough to show that the reputation of the 7 great sects of the celestial pole continent was not undeserved. However, this battle had also greatly affected the arrogance of the God Yi army, and the nearly 10,000 people who fled had no fighting spirit to speak of. On the 19th of July, after a short rest and feeding of the war horses, the Longdan army camp attacked again in the morning. In less than an hour they caught up with the defeated 10,000 God Yi army in the valley between 2 mountains and quickly massacred them. This time the loss was very small. The entire 30,000 people of the God Yi army were all killed, and there were no more than 100 people left alive. It could be said to be extremely tragic. On the 20th of July, the main forces of Feng Jixing and Tang Xiaoxi fought with the main forces of the Flowing Wind Army in Yang County, killing more than 30,000 people, and the Flowing Wind Army continued to be defeated. On the 22nd of July, Lin Muyu led the Longdan army camp to annihilate a group of scattered soldiers of the Flowing Wind Army at the south bank of the Daojiang tributary, killing more than 4,000 people. On the 24th of July, the main forces of Feng Jixing and Tang Xiaoxi caught up with Castor's troops again. They fought for 2 days and 2 nights at the border of Lingdong province, killing more than 10,000 people. On the 25th of July, the army of Xiangyu killed more than 3,000 people. On the 26th of July, the armies of the Tianji Empire and the Qin Empire entered the territory of Lingdong province. The Longdan army camp finally caught up with the main forces of the Blood Yi army. They attacked from both sides with the banished army led by Ding Shi and defeated the main forces of the Blood Yi army, killing more than 20,000 people. On the 27th of July, the army of Feng Jixing and Tang Xiaoxi intercepted the remaining troops of Castor outside Winterfrost City, killing more than 5,000 people. On the 28th of July, a total of 5 armies including the Longdan army camp, the Forbidden Army and the Banished Army arrived at Winterfrost City one after another and recaptured the Dongdu. On the 3rd of August, with the mediation of Gong Xiangming, the Flowing Wind Army and the Godly Yi Army joined forces again and fought with the main forces of the Qin Empire 300 miles north of Winterfrost City, but they were defeated. On the 17th of August, Zai and Gong Xiangming officially returned to the Tianji Empire from the East Sea in search of warships, with less than 10,000 people remaining. At this point, the vigorous expedition of the Tianji Empire finally ended in failure. The 400,000 troops occupied 42 states on the territory of the Qin Empire at most, but they still failed at the last moment. The total number of soldiers who returned to the mainland was less than 10,000, and the whole country mourned. At the same time, the Battle of Cangnan Province, which lasted more than a month, finally ended. From Cangnan Province to the Dongdu, the army chased and killed more than 310,000 enemies with the momentum of conquering the country. On the 14th of September 7742 of the Empire calendar, it was autumn. The Empress Qin Yin returned to Lanyan City under the escort of nearly 100,000 soldiers. The army was majestic and stretched for 5 miles. The maple trees along the way were all red, and everything in the capital seemed to be the same as before. However, Qin Yin couldn't open her eyes to see it. Some things couldn't be reversed, just like her black eyes. This was the punishment of fate and the price of happiness. Lin Muyu, who was wearing a white robe of the imperial forest, rode on Takshu. She rode shoulder to shoulder with Chu Chu on one side of Qin Yin, while Feng Jixing and Tang Xiaoxi rode on warhorses on the other side. As for Terralin, Lake and the others, they had already entered the city to enjoy the prosperity of the capital. Qin Yin closed her eyes, but there was a sweet smile at the corner of her mouth. For so many years, this scene only appeared in her dreams, but now it was happening in front of her eyes. Everyone was still there and everything was the same as before. However, the price of defeating the Tianji Empire was too high. The Qin Empire had paid an almost equal amount of losses. As a result, the Longdan Army Camp, the Imperial Guards, the God Might Battalion, the Iron Blade Army, and all the other Imperial legions added up only had a total of 100,000 soldiers. The Shattered Cauldron Realm couldn't afford a second expedition by the Tianji Empire, and the Tianji Empire. Hopefully they couldn't afford a war either. Brother Yu? Qin Yin suddenly called out softly. What's the matter, Xiaoyin? I want a branch of a maple tree. Oh, it's a piece of cake. Lin Muyu picked one from the roadside and handed it to Qin Yin. Qin Yin held the branch and brought it to her nose to sniff. How is it? What's the smell? Lin Muyu asked with a smile. Qin Yin pouted and said, It's obviously a branch of a locust tree. You lied to me. Wei Chou, Su Jiantao and the others burst into laughter. The Emperor of Qin teasing the Empress was something that everyone was looking forward to, right? Peace was like a dream that people yearned for and indulged in. Chapter 931. Lanyan City was the political and economic center of the empire. During the war, this rich city provided the front line with countless provisions, armors, weapons, and diseases. Now the war situation had finally calmed down temporarily. The citizens of Lanyan City lined the streets to welcome the triumphant return of the empire's army. When they saw Qin Yin in the empress's robe, they were so excited that they couldn't speak. Finally, the era of the three kings was over, and the chaos in the world should also come to an end. Is the war over? Lin Muyu smiled bitterly. She was afraid that it was far from over. The military strength of the celestial pole continent was still several times that of the Shattered Realm. This time, the defeat of the Tianji Empire's expeditionary army might lead to a new change in the structure of the celestial pole continent. No one knew what the future would be like, so they could only be cautious and careful. Qin Yin had already changed her angel costume into the military uniform of the empire's female general. She wore a dark blue robe embroidered with golden-purple flowers. This was the standard attire of the empress during the war, but she kept her eyes closed and followed Lin Muyu all the way to Zetian Palace Hall. Behind the empress, the imperial guards who had gone to war had already been reduced from more than 100 to at least less than 30. It was very dismal. At least, the empire's generals were still intact. At least, Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Qin Yan, Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, Zhen Yifan, and the others were still alive. These people were the cornerstones of the empire. Qin Yin was very clear that if the soldiers were gone, they could be recruited again. If the famous generals were gone, then it was unknown when a new famous general would emerge. Zetian Palace Hall had already been cleaned in advance. It was solemn and splendid. Everyone walked slowly into the main hall without resting. There were still many things to deal with after the war, so this afternoon was bound to be very busy. Your subjects welcome your highness back to the court. Everyone knelt down one after another. Even the three kings, Lin Muyu, Qin Yan, and Feng Jixing, knelt at the front of the officials. They were distinguished lords, but in front of Qin Yin they were still officials. Everyone please rise. Qin Yin stood up and walked step by step to the edge of the imperial steps. She bowed to the crowd and said, I haven't been in the empire for many years. Everyone has worked hard. It is because of everyone's blood that the Qin clan can still stand on this continent. I, Qin Yin, thank you all on behalf of the Qin clan. Everyone said in unison, we have no regrets serving the empire. Qin Yin looked at Lin Muyu and said, Your Highness you. Lin Muyu was stunned. Xiao Yin? Qin Yin nodded and slowly knelt in front of Lin Muyu. She smiled faintly and said, Big brother you were originally a genius and could live a Xiaoyao's life without caring about worldly affairs. But because of Xiao Yin, big brother you has suffered so much for so many years. I know it's all my fault. It's hard for you to meet me. She was very moved. The eyelashes under her eyes trembled slightly as she knelt on the ground. Lin Muyu hurriedly walked forward and held her arms. She said softly, Xiao Yin, you are crazy. You are the empress. How can you kneel to an official? Quickly get up. Qin Yin pursed her red lips. Not only am I the empress, I am also your younger sister. We are not monarch and official. Anyway, you can't kneel to me. Quickly get up. Okay. When Qin Yin stood up, Lin Muyu then knelt down with a peace of mind. She raised her eyes and glared at Shengguan Jingyue. She had neglected her duties as the chief female official. However, Shengguan Jingyue also looked helpless. Obviously, she did not have any cultivation. How could she stop what Qin Yin wanted to do? In the main hall there were many officials. At least more than 200 civil and military officials followed Qin Yin back to Zetian Hall. In addition to the original high-ranking officials of Lanyan City, there were at least 300 people standing in the main hall. Feng Jixing touched his nose. He felt that Qin Yin and Lin Muyu were showing off. He said softly, I feel that you are going to be promoted. What? Lin Muyu was stunned. Feng Jixing said, Her Highness treats you as a brother and a lover. You are the main contributor. If you don't get promoted, who else will? Get promoted to an X. Lin Muyu couldn't help but curse. We're all royal nobles now. Below monarchs are royal nobles. The three of us are only below one person but above tens of thousands. If we go any higher, we'll be breaking the heavens. I think we're lucky to not be demoted. What? Feng Jixing was puzzled. Lin Muyu said softly, Look at the many officials behind us. Many of them are princes from various places. Their troops will soon arrive at Lanyan City. It is called rescuing the emperor, but in fact they are taking advantage of the empire to ask for official positions. Just wait and see. Now that Xiaoyin is back, the three of us will definitely not be able to stay as princes for long. Feng Jixing frowned. You're right. I should have thought of this a long time ago. They will definitely restrict the power of the three of us. However, as long as we hold the military power in our hands, everything will be fine. The crux is that we don't have the military power in our hands. Lin Muyu said, Look, my Longdan army camp and your imperial guards only have a total of less than 30,000 people. It's pitifully small. Any one of these honest princes behind us might have a military power that surpasses ours. The actual situation is that our army has been depleted in battle, while the military power of this group of people is still very intact. Feng Jixing clenched his fist. It's fine. Don't worry. We are gods, and you are a god who possesses a supreme character. If they really make things difficult for us, we'll just kill every prince that comes. What's the big deal? Then the world will probably really be in chaos. Lin Muyu glared at him. Brother Feng, you are too straightforward. You try to discuss everything with me first before making a decision. You are getting more and more cautious in doing things. It's no wonder that the former emperor took you in as his godson. Qin Yen coughed. Hey Prince Qin and Prince Xan, it's court time now. The two of you should speak softly. Cousin and everyone else are looking at you. Cough, cough. As expected, Zhen Yifan, Su Yu, Tang Xiaoxi, and the other princes were all staring at Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing, the two greatest contributors to the empire's revival. Every one of them looked as if they had seen a ghost. Logically speaking, people who had made such immortal contributions should be steady, but these two were too careless. Qin Yin smiled and said, Then shall we begin the court discussion? Present the memorial one by one. Yes. Not long after, Zheng Yifan took a step forward with a jade tablet in his hand and said, Your Highness, this old subject has a memorial. Please speak, Lord Fan. Zheng Yifan said, The empire's army has been continuously reduced over the years. Its military strength has been reduced from the original hundreds of thousands to the current 100,000. This old subject thinks that the new recruits recruited by the various princes are too many and difficult to train. This old subject thinks that we should draw soldiers from the armies of the various princes and replenish the empire's regular army, restoring the army's original organizational structure as soon as possible. Qin Yi nodded in approval and said, Yes, this is indeed an urgent matter. Then, what do the princes think? In the crowd, a dignified middle-aged general cupped his fists and said, Your Highness, this is not appropriate. When we recruited soldiers, it was because the country was in danger, so the people were willing to put down their farming and go to the emperor's aid. But now that the enemy has been eliminated, this subordinate thinks that these soldiers should return to farming. Otherwise, the empire will no longer have usable military rations. The person who spoke was called Zhuang Yan, the governor of Xiang City. He commanded more than 50,000 troops and was also one of the strongest princes. Zheng Yifan couldn't help but laugh and said, Lord Zhuang Yan, if all the princes left with their troops, then who will protect the imperial capital Lanyan City? Moreover, the empire's army urgently needs to replenish its military strength. All of you are also His Highness's subjects, shouldn't you serve the country? Another old general laughed. He stroked his white beard and said, What Lord Fan said is a little biased. Although it is the duty of a minister to be loyal to the country, we have to be worthy of the emperor and worthy of the common people. We can't disregard the lives of the people for our own selfishness, am I right? Lord Su Changjing really knows how to talk, Zheng Fang said resentfully. Su Changjing was the biggest prince in Yunzhong province, with more than 45,000 troops. Some people said that he was the illegitimate son of the Duke of Muyun, Su Muyun, but no one knew whether it was true or not. But now that he had become famous, he couldn't be underestimated. Lin Muyu was a little angry. She turned around to look at the group of princes and said, Military strength, are you going to give it or not? Just say it. There's no need to beat around the bush. Tell me, are you willing to contribute your military strength to the empire's army? He had already used the invisible elephant technique's domain. For a moment, all the princes felt as if they were in an ice cave, almost unable to breathe. Of course there's nothing we can't do, Su Changjing said. Zhuang Yan said, but the provinces and prefectures do need military strength, and more than half of the soldiers have to go back to farming. Therefore, I've decided to take 10% of the military strength from each army and give it to the Ministry of War. This is more reasonable. 10%? Qin Yin frowned slightly. What's enough for 10%? 20%. No one is allowed to disobey. Otherwise they will be punished according to military law. Yes. The group of princes knelt down one after another, their faces pale. Qin Yin continued, in 7 days all the soldiers must be reported to the Ministry of War. The Ministry of Personnel will reward the princes according to the number of troops they have handed over. The reward ceremony will be held in 7 days. Thank you, Your Highness. The ministers cheered. Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing and Tang Xiaoxi all wore cold expressions. Obviously, the situation was no longer under Zetian Palace's control. The princes had their own ideas and the people's hearts were in chaos. Late at night, there was a sea of sparks outside Lanyan City. The troops of various princes arrived one after another. In the darkness of the night, a group of noble generals dressed in brocade entered a large tent in the chaotic camp. They were the princes with strong military strength who had been in Zetian Palace during the day. Zhuang Yan, Su Chengjing, Lu Xiu and the others were among them. Chapter 933. Servants serve the wine. This was Zhuang Yan's main tent, so naturally he was the host. Zhuang Yan had close to 60,000 soldiers under his command. He had brought almost all the soldiers he could gather from the entire Swift White province. As the most powerful feudal lord, he seemed to have other plans. Su Chengjing, Lu Xiu and the others sat down one after another. They looked at each other, not knowing why Zhuang Yan had called them here. The song and dance can begin now, Zhuang Yan said lightly. Inside the barracks, slender women in black cloaks walked in one by one. Under the illumination of the candlelight, their beautiful faces were extremely moving. What was unimaginable was that there were actually dozens of high-quality beauties hidden within the army. However, it seemed that these beauties were merely Zhuang Yan's exclusive pets. The dancers raised their hands and untied the cloaks in front of their chests. When the cloaks fell to the ground, everyone's eyes lit up. These dancers only wore close-fitting silk dresses, which outlined their graceful figures very enchanting. Their bodies swayed gently and it was extremely beautiful. Everyone, how are the beauties of my Swift White province? Zhuang Yan suddenly asked. Su Chengjing was startled, then he smiled and said, very good. The Swift White province is indeed a good place to nurture such stunning beauties. Zhuang Yan raised his cup and laughed, come, let's drink to the brim first. No one dared to disrespect Zhuang Yan. Everyone raised their cups. After 3 rounds of wine, Zhuang Yan waved his hand. Immediately the dancers took their seats. Almost every feudal lord had a dancer beside him. Zhuang Yan squinted his eyes and smiled, there's wine for today. Please don't let this good time go to waste. Ha. Bailing City's prefect Lu Xiu frowned and said, Lord Zhuang Yan, I wonder why you called us here. Zhuang Yan said, it's nothing important. I just wanted to invite all of you here for a banquet. Why, Prefect Lu, do you think I have something on my mind? Ah. Lu Xiu cupped his fists. No, please don't think too much. No, I really do have something on my mind. Zhuang Yan's voice suddenly became stern. Immediately all the vassals looked over. Zhuang Yan seemed to be a bit drunk as he stood up shakily. Holding a wine cup in his hand, he said, we are all subjects of the empire, and we have worked hard for the sake of protecting the emperor. Today the forces gathered by all of you here are more than 10,000 men. We have dragged out an ignoble existence in our respective cities, seized cities from the enemy, and slaughtered their soldiers. However, to this day we have not received any rewards. Why is it that Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, and the others have been promoted to nobility and given more contributions? What? It's only because they are the direct subordinates of Qin Emperor Lin Muyu. I Zhuang Yan feel sorry for everyone here. Su Chengjing remained silent. Lu Xiu, on the other hand, put down his wine cup with an indignant look on his face and said, that's right, they look down on our background and think that we are just local tyrants. The words of Zetian Palace have never been in our hands. Her Highness, the Empress, has only put people like Zhen Yifan, Su Yu, Lin Muyu, and Feng Jixing in important positions. She has nepotism, and vassals from other places like us will never have a chance. That's right. A burly man stood up. He was the prefectural governor of Tianshu province, and his name was Zhou Han. He had gathered more than 20,000 soldiers. At this moment, his face was flushed red and he said angrily, we also want to serve the empire, but why are we always inferior to others? Zhuang Yan smiled faintly and said, that's right, that's the reason. If we hand over our military power, I'm afraid that we will soon become fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Everyone, we have to think about our future and prospects. Su Chengjing narrowed his eyes and asked with a smile, then, What exactly do you think, Sir Zhuangyan? Zhuangyan laughed heartily and suddenly threw his wine cup to the ground. The world should be governed by the people of the world. Why should one person have the final say? Everyone was shocked. Zhuangyan's words were no different from treason. Lu Xiu frowned and said, Sir Zhuangyan, please be careful with your words. Her Highness is benevolent and has never done anything that would harm the common people. If your words are heard by the three dukes or Princess Shi, I'm afraid you will have to bear the consequences. What? Are you afraid, Sir Lu? Zhuangyan smiled and pointed at the door. The door is over there. If Sir Lu is afraid, please leave. I Zhuangyan do not keep cowards in my tent. Lu Xiu gritted his teeth. When he came in he saw many guards outside the tent. If he really went out he might not have the chance to return to his tent. Zhuangyan was a ruthless person, and there was nothing he couldn't do. I'm not afraid, I'm just worried, Lu Xiu said. Don't worry. As long as the feudal vassals stick together, what can they do? Zhuangyan said. Yes. Yes. Everyone agreed in unison. Su Changjing said, then what does Sir Zhuangyan want? Zhuangyan said, doesn't Her Highness want 20% of our military strength? Then give it to her. After everyone returns to the camp, pick out the old, weak and sick in the army and hand them over to the Ministry of War. These old and weak people were originally used to make up the numbers, so it doesn't matter if we give it to them. In addition, please gather your encampments and surround the Swift White Province's feudal army. Don't let them break through one by one. Yes, that makes sense. Zhuangyan squinted his eyes and said, in addition, we have to submit a joint memorial. Oh, what memorial? Su Changjing was stunned. Power reduction. For the stability of the people of the empire, power must be reduced. Whose power is reduced? The 3 dukes, 4 dukes and 5 marquises. Everyone fell silent. The 3 dukes, 4 dukes and 5 marquises were all important officials of the empire. Other than Yao Yuan, the Marquis of the Tranquil Sea, and Luo Xen, the Duke of the North, the rest had made great contributions to the empire. It wouldn't be easy to reduce their power. Zhuangyan seemed to have seen through everyone's doubts. He smiled and said, I know that everyone thinks this is difficult, but it's actually not that difficult. We only need to submit a request. The decision can only be made by Her Highness. All we need to do is to put on a show. Only by reducing the power of the 3 dukes will we have a chance, right? Yes. Everyone nodded in unison. Lu Xiu frowned and said, if we were to submit a memorial like this, I'm afraid it would be no different from a rebellion. After all, Her Highness the Empress is a God-state cultivator. In addition to Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, and the others, how are we mortals going to face their might? Therefore, we need someone who can make Her Highness fear and control Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing at the same time, Zhou Heng said with a smile. Oh. Zhuangyan was stunned. There is such a person in this world? Who is Lord Zhou Heng? If I can invite this person, he will definitely be able to turn the situation around. Who is it? Jing, allow me to keep you in suspense. Aha, just wait and see. Zhou Heng said proudly, my Heaven's Pivot province is rich in resources and has many hidden dragons and crouching tigers. It will definitely broaden your horizons. 7 days later, at the barracks of the Ministry of War. Early in the morning, a group of cavalrymen flew into the barracks. It was Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing. They had brought a group of guards to select new soldiers. This was a promise that Qinin had made to them. She had allowed the Longdan army camp and the Imperial army to have priority in recruiting new soldiers. The vassals outside the city had contributed 20% of their troops, which was a total of 130,000 soldiers. It should be enough. However, when Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing entered the drill ground, their faces turned ashen. The drill ground was densely packed with new soldiers, but their clothes were disheveled. Almost all of them were veterans and many of them were crippled. They couldn't even lift a spear. What's going on? Wei Chou frowned. Their average age is enough to be my father's. Feng Jixing sneered. I knew it. These vassals won't be so kind as to hand over their elite troops. They're just putting up a front. We should have killed them back at Zetian Palace. If you kill them, Xiaoyin will have a hard time as the empress. Lin Muyu curled her lips. Then what do you think we should do? Feng Jixing was getting impatient. It seems that the vassals have already begun to form an alliance. They started moving their camps a few days ago. Now, all of them are in the southern area of Lanyan City. There are a total of 600,000 to 700,000 men and horses. The amount of rations supplied to them every day is not a small amount. If this goes on, I'm afraid that Lanyan City will be emptied by them in less than half a year. What should we do? Feng Jixing asked. We can't always be so passive and helpless, right? We don't have any soldiers now and we can't use force against them. After all, they are all people of the empire. If we use force, I'm afraid that we will lose the support of the people. Lin Muyu pondered. How about this? Think of a way to capture the leader first. Find an opportunity to kill all the feudal lords, and their troops will naturally belong to us. What kind of opportunity? A banquet. Brother Feng, you can host a banquet in your own residence to entertain the feudal lords. Feng Jixing rolled his eyes. Are you kidding me? Where would I get a residence? It's not like you don't know that I've been freeloading in the Imperial Army's barracks ever since I returned to Lanyan City. However, it's better to host a banquet in your residence. Lin Muyu glared at him. Do you think I have a residence? Have you forgotten that I've been freeloading at Xiao Yin's place for 7 or 8 days? Then what should we do? Let Duke Fan host? The Divine Marquis's residence is still very big. That's good too. We'll discuss it with Duke Fan. Okay. Zheng Yifan, who was drinking his morning tea, suddenly sneezed. What's wrong, father? Zheng Fang asked. Zheng Yifan rubbed his nose and said, I have a feeling that something bad is coming. Oh, what could it be? A guard's voice came from outside the door. Duke Fan, Prince Qin, Prince Xian, and Duke Wei are here. Sure enough, something bad is coming. Zheng Yifan squinted his eyes and smiled. These people are definitely not good. Zheng Fang. 10 minutes later, Zheng Yifan's face was ashen after listening to Lin Muyu's words. Duke Fan, please make a decision with benevolence and justice. Lin Muyu said, Brother Feng and I don't have a decent residence in Lanyan City. Your Divine Marquis's residence is so spacious. Moreover, with your reputation, the feudal lords will definitely come. Zheng Yifan took a deep breath. When will the banquet be held? 3 days later. Then, all right. Zheng Yifan raised his head and looked at Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing. Does Her Highness know about this? I don't know. The two of you are really daring. Duke Fan is too kind. Chapter 934. However, before Feng Jixing and Lin Muyu had even stepped out of the door, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard from outside. A guard from the Divine Marquis residence said respectfully, Duke Fan, Sir Zhuang Yan has sent someone to deliver an invitation. He said that there will be a banquet at the Drunken Immortal restaurant tomorrow afternoon, and Duke Fan is invited. The Drunken Immortal restaurant? Zheng Yifan frowned and said, Call him in. Yes. The person sent by Zhuang Yan did not look like a soldier, but more like a businessman. He was fat and had a mustache. When he saw Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing, he immediately smiled and said, So your highnesses are here too, that's even better. Both of you are also invited to the Drunken Immortal restaurant tomorrow afternoon. This is Sir Zhuang Yan's invitation. He took out 4 invitation cards at once. Not only were Zheng Yifan, Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing invited, even Wei Chou was included. What is Sir Zhuang Yan planning to do? Lin Muyu asked. The messenger shook his head and said, This lowly one is just a messenger. As for the details, this lowly one doesn't know. However, Lord Zhuang Yan said that tomorrow at noon, there will be an earth-shattering announcement at the Drunken Immortal Inn. I hope that the 2 princes, Duke Fan and Minister Wei, will not miss it. Who else did he invite? Feng Jixing asked. The 3 highnesses, the 3 dukes and many marquises have been invited. In addition, the Ministry of War, Ministry of Manpower, Ministry of Justice, Divine Temple and Elixir Department of Lanyan City have also been invited. There are about 100 people in total. All right, that's all. You can go now. Tell Zhuang Yan that we will be there on time tomorrow. Yes, then I'll take my leave. After the messenger left, the people in the living room frowned. His movements are quite fast. We didn't even have time to make a move before he made the first move, Lin Muyu said lightly. Tomorrow's lunch at the Drunken Immortal restaurant won't be that delicious. Zheng Yifan nodded. A few days ago, I heard that Zhuang Yan had also invited the various feudal princes to a banquet. Lu Xiu, Su Chengjing, Zhou Heng, Zhao Xinpei, Yang Zhong, and the other feudal princes were all present. The Imperial Army only has 100,000 troops, but the hundreds of feudal princes have 6 or 7 times more troops than us. They can already be considered to have the power to decide life and death. As he spoke, Zheng Yifan sat down and sighed. Originally, we could enjoy peace after defeating the celestial pole continent, but I didn't expect that the Empire's chaos had only just begun. Feng Jixing said, Zhuang Yan and the others don't have good intentions. In my opinion, we should cut the Gordian knot and kill the feudal prince's leaders, ending all troubles once and for all. Your Highness Prince Xan, times have changed. It's no longer the time for you to kill hundreds of generals in the Seven Seas. Back then, the main forces of the Empire's army still existed and Tanglan was still around, so they still had some reservations. But now, the chaos in the feudal vassal states' armies is no longer something that people like Tang Lu can compare to. Zhuang Yan, Su Changjing and Lu Xiu? Which one of them isn't a sly old fox? If we really kill them with our status as Divine Realm experts, their subordinates will also lead their armies to attack Lanyan City. Lin Muyu said, "We'll talk about it after we go to the Drunken Immortal restaurant tomorrow afternoon." Feng Jixing nodded. Lin Muyu then looked at Wei Chou and said, "Deploy 2,000 people from the Longdan army camp to guard the surroundings of the Drunken Immortal restaurant. If anything really goes wrong, we'd rather kill the innocent than let them off. Don't leave any feudal princes alive." Wei Chou cupped his fists. "Yes, I understand." Feng Jixing muttered, "This matter? Should we tell Her Highness Yin and Princess Shi? The two of them have just been freed from the war. It's better not to tell them. We'll make the decision ourselves. I think Xiao Yin and Xiao Shi won't blame us." "All right." The next day at noon, there were no other customers in the Drunken Immortal restaurant on Tongtian Street. The entire place was under martial law by the guards of the feudal prince's armies. However, the streets outside the Drunken Immortal restaurant were tightly guarded by the armored cavalry of the Longdan army camp. If there were any disturbances, the hundreds of guards of the feudal prince's armies naturally wouldn't be a match for the battle-hardened elites of the Longdan army camp. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing arrived at the Drunken Immortal restaurant together. When the two of them entered, they discovered that Qin Yen, Su Yu and Jin Yifan were already there. The huge Drunken Immortal restaurant had already been booked by Zhuang Yan today. There was no one else. All the guests were important ministers of the imperial court. The Ministry of War and the Ministry of Justice all came forward to pay their respects. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing each nodded their heads in return. In reality, with their status, there was no need for them to do so. Not long after, Zhuang Yan, Lu Xiu and the rest walked out from inside. Zhuang Yan laughed heartily and knelt down, saying, "This general pays his respects to the three highnesses. It is the honor of us feudal princes that the three highnesses are willing to give us face." "Lord Zhuang need not be so courteous." "Rise," Lin Muyu said. "Then everyone please take your seats." Zhuang Yan nodded his head with a smile. He led Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Qin Yan, and the rest straight to a large table in the center. The guests at this table were all first rank. Aside from the three princes and three dukes, there were also the Minister of War, the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Revenue and so on. Every single one of them was a heavyweight who could make Lanyan City tremble with a stomp of their feet. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing remained silent. There was no such thing as a good banquet. Today was destined to be a bad day. Delicious delicacies quickly filled the table, and the aroma of wine filled the air. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing had been away from home for many years, so they never had the chance to taste the delicacies of the Drunken Immortal restaurant. Today they couldn't help but be tempted, but they still had to endure it. After all, something big was definitely going to happen today. "I wonder why Lord Zhuang has set up a banquet to entertain us today?" Zhuang Yifan squinted his eyes and asked with a smile. Zhuang Yan smiled slightly and said, "Everyone here is the cornerstone of the empire. The three princes rule the world, the four dukes rule the world, and the five dukes guard the four directions. The Ministry of War and the Ministry of Revenue provide the most solid logistical support for the empire's army. Only by working together can we drive away the powerful enemy. Compared to everyone here, we feudal princes who recruit our own troops simply have no qualifications to speak of. However, the troops in our hands only recognize our faces, so today the purpose of this Zhuang hosting this banquet is to familiarize ourselves with each other, so that we can work together in the future and make preparations for our loyalty to the empire." His loyal and courageous appearance made it hard for anyone to doubt him. Lin Muyu's face was expressionless. After so many years, she could tell at a glance that Zhuang Yan was only a scheming villain. He was still thousands of miles away from being a loyal official. Thus, Lin Muyu said, "When will the banquet start?" "I'm hungry." "Hi, Your Highness Prince Qin, please wait a moment." Zhuang Yan laughed and said, "Today, other than everyone here, this general has also invited a highly respected elder of the empire's royal family. With him here, the empire can truly be at peace for a long time." Lin Muyu was a little displeased and said, "Who is this person? How can he have such a big tone?" We found this person in Heaven's Pivot Province. He has already concealed his identity for many years, escaping from Fairy Lake to live in the northeast of Heaven's Pivot Province, living like a hunter. I think Your Highness Prince Zhong should be quite familiar with him. Zhuang Yin looked deeply at Qin Yin. Qin Yin was slightly stunned. I? What am I familiar with? Call him over first. All right. Zhuang Yin clapped his hands and said, Men, invite His Highness in. Immediately, the curtains at the back of the hall were pulled open. An old man with grizzled hair and beard walked over under the support of 2 guards. His spirit was still considered hale and hearty, but his appearance was incomparably aged. Everyone stared dumbfounded with their mouths agape, feeling that he was somewhat familiar. Even Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing were dumbfounded. They seemed to have seen this person before somewhere, but they could not quite remember. Among the crowd, only Qin Yin slowly stood up and walked over in a daze, saying in a trembling voice, Royal Father, is that you? Royal Father. The arrival was precisely Prince Jining Qin Quan. Qin Jin, Qin Yi's younger brother. Qin Quan's old tears flowed down, his palm trembling as he supported Qin Yan's arm. Yen. My Yen has grown up. Father misses you and your brother every day. Today I can finally see you guys. Qin Yan lost his voice and cried bitterly, Royal Father, for so many years, we already thought that you were already dead. Why would you appear here today? Qin Shao said, Back then second brother did not listen to my advice and killed royal brother, fratricidal. But he did not want to kill me. He just sent someone to a faraway place on a horse alone. He said before that as long as I concealed my identity, he would not pursue it. Otherwise he would definitely send people to hunt me down. For so many years, I've always been hiding deep in the mountains without anyone knowing. Yen, your brother, Qin Yan's tears flowed. My brother, he already died for the country during the Lanyan City Rebellion 11 years ago. My Ale, Qin Quan's entire body trembled. Only when he got this news from Qin Yan's mouth did he truly feel the pain of losing a loved one. Zhuang Yin walked forward and supported Qin Quan, saying, Your Highness, please take a seat. Commander Qin Lei sacrificed his life for the country. He is the pride of the empire. You should be happy for him. Qin Shao nodded and took a seat. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing stood up at the same time and said respectfully, Greetings, Your Highness Prince Yuning. I know you too. Qin Quan said faintly, You are Lin Muyu, royal brother's adopted son, and you are Feng Jixing, the commander of the imperial army. That's right. You two are already dukes now. Qin Quan looked at their cloaks and naturally knew their identities. Su'er said, Your Highness Prince Yuning, you has been conferred the title of Qin King, Feng Jixing has been conferred the title of Xian King, and your son Qin Yin has been conferred the title of Zhong King. For so many years, it was the 3 of them who have been ruling the world of Great Qin. I know all of it, Feng Jixing smiled. Your Highness Prince Yuning is Her Highness Empress's uncle. It's great that you can return safe and sound. The Empire has gained another capable official, it's a blessing. Why don't Your Highness be escorted by us to Zetian Palace to see Her Highness Empress? Qin Quan was startled and didn't say anything. Instead, Zhuang Yin smiled, Your Highness Prince Yuning must be tired from the journey. Don't rush to see Her Highness Empress for now. Why don't you wait for the morning court meeting? Feng Jixing said coldly, Since when did a small governor of Xiang City like you have the right to decide Prince Yuning's matters? His words were filled with murderous intent, and Zhuang Yin couldn't help but turn pale. Lin Muyu quickly pressed her hand on Feng Jixing's wrist and said, Brother Feng, let's wait for Prince Yuning's opinion first. Qin Quan coughed violently and said, Then, tomorrow morning. We're not in a hurry anyway. I've been traveling in the mountains for so many years and I've heard a lot of things. I can write a memorial to Her Highness Empress. Lin Muyu nodded, okay. Feng Jixing glared at Lin Muyu, seemingly dissatisfied. Meanwhile, Lin Muyu's voice passed into Feng Jixing's ears like a silk thread. I know Zhuang Yin wants to control us through Prince Yuning, but we can't act rashly. After all, we have to show respect to Prince Yuning, the Emperor's uncle, and even more so to Yen. He just learned that his father is still alive. How can we pour cold water on him now? Feng Jixing's anger gradually subsided. He nodded and didn't say anything more. He started to eat. Chapter 935. After the luncheon, Qin Yin brought Qin Lian back to Prince Yuning's residence. Meanwhile, Zhuang Yin brought nearly 5,000 people to protect the residence. They surrounded it heavily as if not even a fly could fly in. Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Wei Chou, and Suyu escorted them to the outside of the residence. The four of them paced back and forth on their horses. I still want to go in and ask Prince Yuning, Feng Jixing said. Lin Muyu nodded. Me too. Suer said, that's true. Prince Yuning didn't come earlier or later but at this time. In my opinion, Zhuang Yin doesn't have any good intentions. It's as if he's holding Prince Yuning hostage. Not necessarily but... Lin Muyu frowned. But it does seem abnormal. Logically speaking, Zhuang Yin can't change the situation of the Marquis's army being reduced even if he finds Prince Yuning. Does he really want to betray the country? Feng Jixing said, don't talk about it. We'll know once we break the void and ask. Yes. The guards outside the door prevented others from entering Prince Yuning's residence, but they couldn't stop two God State experts. Pop. Purple lightning flashed in the side hall of the residence. Two figures flashed in. It was Feng Jixing and Lin Muyu. At this moment, Qin Lian held a teacup in her hand. She slowly raised her head and said, Your Highnesses, if you want to come in, come in. Why do you have to do this? Please forgive us, Your Highness. Lin Muyu cupped her fists and said, Zhuang Yan's people outside the door won't let us in. Qin Lian frowned. Why is it like this? Feng Jixing was impatient. He said, Your Highness, please tell us the truth. What did Zhuang Yan say to you? This time he invited you back from Tianshu province. Something big must have happened, right? Qin Lian leisurely took a sip of tea and said, Do you really want to know? Yes. Okay, there's no harm in telling you. Qin Kong smiled faintly and said, This time, a total of 174 feudal vassals have joined forces to request the Empress to reduce her power. Power reduction? Lin Muyu was stunned. That's right. Qin Shao said, Zhuang Yan proposed a strategy to rule the country, called The People of the World Rule the World Together. He asked the Empire to return power to the world. The first step is to reduce power and remove all the titles of Duke, Marquis and Earl. The salaries of these titles are too much, burdening the people of the world. The power of these titles is too great, making the people of the world feel unfair. From now on, I'm afraid the Great Qin will only have one Royal Highness, the Empress. There will no longer be the 3 dukes and 5 marquises. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing were stunned. Qin Kong smiled. What? Are the two of you reluctant to give up your fame and fortune? Of course I'm willing. Lin Muyu smiled brightly. It's just that I don't know what Zhuang Yan and the others want to do. What happens after we lose our power? After we lose our titles, who will rule the world? Congress. Qin Shao said, this is their initial plan. They will set up a huge conference system, make laws and rule the country by law. Her Royal Highness will no longer be the highest authority. All major decisions will have to be discussed by the Congress before they can be passed. Feng Jixing was a little annoyed. Is this treason? A bunch of B*****stards, how dare they dismiss Her Royal Highness? This is simply wishful thinking. I can kill them all with my 2 knives. Qin Kong smiled. His Royal Highness Prince Xian is a god. Although he won't be restricted by many things in the mortal world, as long as Prince Xian kills people, it will be equivalent to giving the Marquis army a reason to attack Lanyan City. With 700,000 Marquis army soldiers, can the 30,000 Longdan army camp and Imperial guards in Lanyan City stop them? You say something. Feng Jixing said. Lin Muyu stood there as if she had been petrified. A few words flew in her mind. They were about to set up a congress. Was this considered progress for historical civilization or a regression? From the perspective of civilization, he should support the establishment of a congress and the establishment of a constitutional state. However, from his own perspective, how could he let those despicable people deprive Qin Yin's legitimate heir of the throne? Now there were 2 choices in front of Lin Muyu. One was to use Feng Jixing's method and kill the leaders of the Marquis army in a thunderous manner. Then they would start a war and forcefully conquer the 700,000 troops outside the city. However, the result would be the end of the empire. There wouldn't be any more troops. As long as the celestial pole continent sent another group of elite troops over, the empire would no longer have any troops to resist. The second choice was to comply with their decision, set up a congress, remove the Marquis army, and establish a constitutional state. Xiao Yin's power will be disintegrated one by one, right? Lin Muyu asked. Qin Shao nodded. Yes, they will gradually take control of the Congress and hold real power. The final result is that Her Highness will lose the throne and become a commoner. Old Highness, as Xiao Yin's uncle and the 3rd brother of the late Emperor Qin Jin, Are you willing to watch the Qin Empire be controlled by others? Lin Muyu looked deeply at Qin Lian. Qin Lian's eyes were a little cloudy. She sighed and said, I'm already old. I don't know how many more years I can live. I'm already very satisfied to be able to see Yan. Do you want me to see the Qin Empire fall apart, you? If we comply with the will of Zhuang Yan and the other marquis, the empire can still protect itself. If we don't comply, I'm afraid the Qin Empire will fall apart in 3 years. So be it. It's fine if I don't become the Qin Emperor, Lin Muyu said dejectedly. Feng Jixing was stunned. Are you just going to let yourself be bound? No, I'm the divine king. Who dares to bind me? Lin Muyu smiled faintly and said, I just don't want Xiao Yin and myself to be bound to this plane for the rest of our lives. I have a bigger goal. Brother Feng, you're also a god. Don't you want to see the outside world? Do you want to be Prince Xian in the Shattered Cauldron realm for the rest of your life? Feng Jixing touched his nose. Look at what you're saying. You have Her Highness Yin and Princess Shi to play in the outside world. What about me? I'm all alone. Will you bring me along? Of course. You're my big brother. All right then. Feng Jixing said unhurriedly, Your Highness, since you want to reduce my authority, just do it. Feng Jixing will not stop you. However, what I mean is that even if a parliament is established, the position of the Empress as the supreme ruler must be maintained. At least, it must be maintained before Her Highness Yin voluntarily abdicates. Lin Muyu also smiled faintly. If anyone wants to drag Xiao Yin down from the throne, I'll chop his head off immediately. Your Highness, please help us pass this message to Zhuang Yan and the other feudal vassals. If they want to reduce their authority and establish a parliament, they must hand over the military power of 300,000 elite soldiers for the various armies of the empire to choose from. In addition, even if a parliament is established, Xiao Yin must have the final veto power. This is my only request. If this cannot be negotiated, I swear that I'll single-handedly wipe out the entire family of all feudal vassals. If they don't believe me, they can try. Qin Kong was stunned. He could tell that Lin Muyu was not joking, and he indeed had the ability to do so. Thus he nodded and said, I'll pass this message. It's rare that you and General Feng both have the demeanor of a gentleman. Otherwise, the world would definitely be in chaos. Lin Muyu's heart was heavy. I'm afraid that from now on, Great Qin will enter a civilized era of constitutional monarchy. Constitutional monarchy? Feng Jixing and Qin Kong asked together in shock. It was not strange that they did not understand this kind of civilization. The next day during the morning assembly, the sun rose high in the sky, and the ministers all came to court. Each of them wore a smile on their faces, but each had their own thoughts. Some already knew that the empire was about to change, while others were still in the dark. In the main hall, Qin Yin, wearing the empress's robe, sat on the throne accompanied by Terralin and Tang Xiaoxi. She had also learned about what had happened in the parliament. Lin Muyu had come last night. Regarding this matter, Qin Yin was surprisingly calm. She had already seen through it a lot, and she did not even have the slightest nostalgia for the throne. Qin Kong walked to the front with the scroll in his trembling hand. He cupped his fists and bowed to Qin Yin, then turned around and opened the scroll. In a clear voice he said, Since ancient times, things in the world will change when they are poor, and change will lead to change. The change in the imperial power lies in the hearts of the people. Her Highness is benevolent and has decided to remove all the titles of kings, dukes, marquises, and earls. All officials will be divided according to their ranks. In addition, a parliament will be established. Within 7 days, the first set of Great Qin's constitution will be drawn up. The country will be governed by this constitution, and the title of empress will be preserved. All major decisions must first be passed through the parliament and then the empress. Otherwise they will not be implemented. Zhuang Yin could not help but frown. This last sentence seemed to have been added by Qin Kong himself. Motherf ***, that old bastard. He could not help but curse. But not far away, Qin Yan's gaze shot over like a sharp sword, causing Zhuang Yin to tremble uncontrollably. Qin Yin stood up and said, Approved. I just don't know, how does uncle plan to select the members of this parliament? Under the king's steps, a group of dukes all knelt on the ground and said in unison, We recommend His Highness Prince Ji Ning to be the president of the parliament. He will oversee everything, including the selection of members of the parliament. Qin Yin frowned and said, Other than the president, what other positions have been established by the parliament? 10 executive officers of the parliament, second only to the president, Qin Xiao said. That's good. Qin Yin waved her hand and said, I will personally choose 5 of these 10 executive officers. Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Suyu, Tang Xiaoxi and Wei Chou. It's decided. Qin Xiao froze. What can't I? Qin Yin slowly opened her flaming eyes and restrained most of her divine power, but it was still very hot. She said, Dukes, do you think my proposal is feasible? This was the first time Qin Yin referred to herself as the Emperor, and showed her authority. All the dukes knelt at almost the same time. Yes, it's feasible. We will obey your highness' order. The corner of Lin Muyu's mouth rose. As expected, Qin Yin easily did it. As long as her 5 people entered the parliament and occupied half of the 10 executive officers, the overall situation would not be affected by others. And what Lin Muyu wanted was just for the dukes to hand over half of their military power. As long as she had troops in her hands, there was no need to fear that this parliament would break the heavens. After that, the entire afternoon's discussion became simple. The personnel of the parliament was confirmed. Other than Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing and the other 5 executive officers, Zhuang Yan, Lu Xiu, Su Changjing, Zhou Heng and Yang Zhong occupied the remaining 5 positions. The identities of 214 members of the parliament were quickly confirmed. Most of them were dukes. The constitutional monarchy was slowly being implemented. Of course, how many people could clearly see the undercurrents flowing under the surface? Chapter 936. Holding the golden token in their hands, Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, and Qin Yin knelt on one knee and raised the token of Emperor Qin, token of Emperor Xin, and token of Emperor Loyalty. Meanwhile, Shengguan Jingyue collected them one by one and put them on the maid's tray. She said, Your Highness, the token of Emperor Qin, token of Emperor Xin, and token of Emperor Loyalty have been collected. Qin Yin closed her eyes and said softly, Pass down my order. Reinstate Lin Muyu as the commander of the Longdan army camp, reinstate Feng Jixing as the commander of the Imperial Guards, and promote Qin Yin as the Grand Deacon of the Sanctum. Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, and the others will be given other important positions and arrangements. Zhuang Yin was taken aback. He glanced at the feudal vassals behind him. Immediately, Su Changjing cupped his fists and said, Your Highness, please reconsider. The position of the commander of the Imperial Main Army is related to the overall situation. We need to be more cautious. Since the Congress has been established, the positions of the commanders of the Longdan Army Camp and the Imperial Guards should be reappointed. The decision should be made by all the members of the Congress. Please consider it, Your Highness. Qin Yin's face was cold. She said indifferently, The Longdan Army Camp is the army that I rely on the most. The Imperial Guards are my guards that protect the Imperial capital. Why can't I decide on these 2 armies? How can I allow the Congress to intervene? Lin Muyu also sneered, Su Changjing, aren't you stretching your hands a little too far as the Grand Deacon? The Longdan Army Camp is my army. Everyone is my people. The future of the Longdan Army Camp can only be decided by me. Who do you think you are? Lin Muyu. Su Changjing was so angry that he was trembling. Don't forget that you are no longer the king of Qin. As one of the Grand Deacons of the Congress, is this what you should say? You dare to open a dye house just because I show you some color? The Shenyuan sword in Lin Muyu's hand had already started humming and shining with golden light. Feng Jixing hurriedly stopped the fight. He grabbed Lin Muyu's wrist that was holding the sword and said to Su Changjing, Lord Su, don't continue to anger Commander Yu. Don't forget that Commander Yu is the greatest contributor in defeating the Qinji Empire and the Blackstone Empire and recovering half of the Qin Empire. Moreover, Commander Yu is a god of the mortal world and you are just a mortal. You can kill you as if you were an ant. Commander Yu is you. Although he was trying to stop the fight, in fact, every word he said was like a sword stabbing into Su Changjing's heart. Lin Muyu did not pay attention to Zhuang Yan and Su Changjing. She just cupped her hands respectfully and said to Qin Yin, Your Highness, since the feudal princes have agreed to allocate half of their troops to replenish the armies of the empire, we should do it immediately. The Longdan Army Camp and the Imperial Army were originally formed with 100,000 people. I request Your Highness to approve that General Feng and I will personally go to the feudal prince's troops to select. Select? Zhuang Yan was stunned. What? Can't I? Lin Muyu raised her eyebrows and said, This is what Lord Zhuang Yan has promised. If you go back on your word, the Congress will be cancelled immediately. You will all go back to your respective cities and wait for Your Highness' reward. This, Zhuang Yan looked helpless and said, But if we only select our troops, won't the rest be a group of old, weak, sick and disabled people? Then what does Lord Zhuang want? The soldiers of our army are as close as brothers. All the centurions, chiliarchs and captaincy must appoint their own brothers. Otherwise their combat power will be greatly reduced. Please consider this, Commander Yu. Sure. Lin Muyu nodded and said, after the court meeting, I will send someone to Lord Zhuang Yan's camp to select 10,000 people to replenish the Longdan army camp. Lord Zhuang Yan, please send someone back to inform all the soldiers to wait for the selection in their respective camps' drill grounds. Feng Jixing said, oh right, I also want 10,000 people. Also, I want 10,000 people from Lord Su Changjing's and Lord Lu Xiu's armies. I hope you can start preparing immediately. Lu Xiu and Su Changjing's faces were ashen. But this was the price they had to pay. The establishment of the Congress was a compromise and a deal. If they wanted to get rid of their status as feudal princes and enter the imperial court, they had to pay a price. Qinyin pursed her red lips and said, let's do it this way. Where is the Ministry of War? The Minister of War hurriedly stepped forward and said respectfully, Your Highness, what orders do you have for me? Send someone to cast a new marshal's seal immediately. Engrave Lin Muyu's name on it. From today onwards, Lin Muyu will carry the marshal's seal when not in battle. During wartime, we will discuss further. Lin Muyu has the supreme authority to control the entire army of the empire. Regardless of whether it is the regular army or the feudal prince's army, they must obey Lin Muyu's orders. That's all. Qin Yin's words made the feudal prince's faces turn green and purple. Everyone felt as though they had gone for wool and come home shorn. However, they couldn't disobey her. After all, the Congress had yet to mature, and many powers had to be fought for step by step. At this moment, the Empress's orders were above all else, and no one could disobey her. Feng Jixing smiled and said, Congratulations you. Even though you have been removed from the title of King Qin, you have become the marshal. Lin Muyu couldn't express her bitterness and said, If you want to be the marshal, you can do it. I'm not too interested. I don't want to wrangle with these petty officials who haggle over minor matters. Feng Jixing's voice wasn't soft, and the feudal princes were enraged when they heard it. His meaning was self-evident. He was saying that the feudal princes were just some powerful and nouveau riche from small places. They couldn't even get on the stage of the imperial capital. This was simply a face-slapping. At this moment, Xiangyu cupped his fists and said, Your Highness, Qinyin smiled faintly and said, General Xiangyu, you don't have to worry. Mingshan province is located at the southern border and needs to be heavily guarded. Naturally, a new army will be established and you will be the commander of this army. Yes, thank you for your concern for the southern provinces, Your Highness. Zhuang Yan continued, Your Highness, I have something to say. Go ahead, Lord Zhuang. Since the Congress has been established, the members of the Congress will need a place to stay. In addition, the meeting hall must be worthy of the status of the Congress, so I suggest that half of the Zetian Palace be divided to be the residence of the members of the Congress. In addition, the main hall of the Zetian Palace can be remodeled into the Congress Hall. What does Your Highness think? What did you say? Lin Muyu's gaze instantly turned cold and she said indifferently, The Zetian Palace is the residence that the late Emperor Qin Jin left for Shaoyin. Are you thinking of stealing it? I'm not stealing, I'm just stating the facts. I hope that Lin General can understand. Zhuang Yan was rather capable of keeping his composure. Lin Muyu waved her hand. Don't even think about it. The Zetian Palace is Xiaoyin's home. No one should even think about getting their hands on it. You'd better find another place to settle down. Don't tell me that the imperial capital can't accommodate 200 people like you? Feng Jixing nodded and said, The Zetian Palace is the symbol of the Great Qin. No one can even think of touching it. Zhuang Yan furrowed his brows and remained silent. At this moment, Qin Lian cupped her fists and said, Your Highness, this old subject has a suggestion. Qin Yi nodded happily and said, Please speak, Imperial Uncle. This old subject's residence is about 1/3 the size of the Zetian Palace. It's quite spacious. The reception hall can accommodate 200 people after some expansion. In addition, there are hundreds of wing rooms in the backyard. I think it should be enough to accommodate all the members of the Congress. As long as the Ministry of Revenue allocates a small amount of funds, the Congress can be built. Is Imperial Uncle really willing to give up the Zetian Palace? Yes. Good. Permission granted. Thank you for your grace, Your Highness. By the time the court meeting ended, it was already close to dusk. The establishment of the Congress was basically completed. The next step was to establish the first constitution based on the laws of the Great Qin. Everyone walked out of the Zetian Palace. Zhuang Yan, Lu Xiu, and the other feudal vassals crowded around Qin Lian. To them, Qin Lian was an invincible token. With Qin Lian around, whether it was Qin Yin or Lin Muyu, they would have to give face to the Congress. Moreover, with Qin Lian around, these feudal vassals would be able to escape death no matter how outrageous they were. Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, and the rest of the people walked down the stairs silently. However, Qin Lian brought everyone forward and said, "Lin General." Lin Muyu looked up at him and smiled faintly. "Oh, it's you, Chief." Qin Lian sighed and hesitated to speak. After a few seconds he said, "This isn't what I truly want. I hope that Lin General can understand. As for the affairs of the Congress, I hope that Lin General can pay more attention to them. Otherwise, I won't be able to handle it alone." "Don't worry, Chief. At least Zhuang Yan, Lu Xiu, Su Changjing, and the other wardens will help you. My task is to manage the military affairs." "In that case," Qin Lian smiled. "Is Lin General planning to separate from me, who is in charge of government affairs and military affairs?" "Chief thinks so, so be it." Lin Muyu cupped her fists and smiled. "Actually, I still have to call you uncle. It's getting late and I have to bring people to the feudal vassal army to select soldiers. Chief, go back and rest early. Ayen, take good care of Chief, understand?" Qin Yin was depressed for the entire afternoon. He couldn't help but be dragged into the dispute between the Congress and the Empress. On one side was his father and on the other side was his cousin and brother. He couldn't control himself and could only cup his fists and said, "Don't worry, big brother. You have to be careful too." "Haha, don't worry. We're going." "Okay." Lin Muyu looked at Qin Lian again and cupped her fists respectfully. "Chief, I'll take my leave. Lin General, have a safe trip. I won't send you off." The two of them turned and went in two different directions. At the entrance of the main hall, Qin Yin was dressed in a long robe with Tang Xiaoxi, Terralin, and the others beside her. She slowly opened her eyes and looked at the backs of Lin Muyu and Qin Lian with a pair of eyes that were mixed with golden flames. Unknowingly, the power of the nation seemed to have become a contest between Lin Muyu and Qin Lian. Who would have thought that the situation would develop to this point? Terralin's beautiful eyes seemed to see through everything. She said, "Lin Muyu has the disposition of a sovereign and is also a deity king. In addition, he has the Shenyuan sword. As long as he wants to, he can destroy the entire Congress by himself. I really don't know why he has to endure this." Qin Yin bit her red lips and said, "It's precisely because he didn't do this that people respect him, love him, regard him as a hero, and respect him as a commander." Chapter 937. In the middle of the night, the vassal army's camp was filled with people shouting and horses neighing. Torches formed a forest as a large number of soldiers gathered in the drill ground. Tens of thousands of soldiers stood motionlessly in the drill ground. Zhuang Yan had a total of more than 50,000 soldiers, and they were selected in the three drill grounds. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing did not bring many people with them. The Longdan army camp and the Imperial army added up to more than 1,000 people. The two God State experts did not care about the vassal army's combat power at all. These were just ordinary people. Only when they were equipped with magic crystal cannons and deicide cannons could they be considered as an army with real lethality. Lin Muyu galloped past the periphery of the phalanx, her eyes falling on the soldiers in the phalanx. She had been in the Shattered Cauldron realm for 11 years and fought for 7 years, so she was very good at judging people. Lin Muyu could almost tell whether a person could become an outstanding soldier at a glance. It was the same for Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, and the others. Naturally, the speed of the selection was very fast. On the contrary, Feng Jixing was very meticulous in his selection. He looked like a clever wife and was very serious and meticulous. Until dawn, Lin Muyu selected more than 40,000 people from the 7 vassal armies to join the Longdan army camp. All of them were led by Wei Chou to the Longdan army camp's northern camp. The original camp of the Longdan army camp was still there, and it was enough to accommodate these people. As for the remaining 50,000 soldiers, they could choose slowly. This matter could not be rushed. Even when it was noon, there was still no rest. The flags of the Dragon's Courage barracks in the north of the city were fluttering in the wind. Inside the main tent, Lin Muyu propped up her chin with one hand and actually dozed off. "Lin General?" Wei Chou smiled. "Why don't you go back to Zetian Hall to sleep? Isn't your room next to Her Highness Yin's?" No, I probably can't go back for a few days. Xiao Yin is accompanied by Xiao Shi and Terralin. I'll stay in the Longdan army camp. Lin Muyu opened her eyes and said, Wei Chou, since the recruits are about to arrive, then the next step is to help them get armors and reorganize them. Also, within 3 days we must prepare for training and quickly raise their battle strength. Yes, this subordinate understands. I'm afraid it won't be that easy, said Sidhu Sr. Of course it won't be that easy. Lin Muyu smiled. What do you think, General Sen? Sidhu Sun cupped his fists and said, Lin General, our newly recruited 40,000 people can be said to be divided into 7 groups. Every feudal lord's men are in one group. They are all closely grouped together. Moreover, the 4 captaincy are not on good terms with each other. As for the 40 Kiliarchs, 80 lieutenants and 400 centurions, almost none of them are loyal to the Longdan army camp. Naturally they won't be loyal. Most of them are the feudal lord's men. Many of them are even the feudal lord's brothers. Zhuang Yan, Su Chengjing, and the others are here to divide the Longdan army camp's cohesion. Then what should we do? Asked Su Jiantao with a frown. It's simple. Lin Muyu spread out the list of officers of the Longdan army camp in front of her and said, Our Longdan army camp used to have 200,000 people. We were invincible when we fought in the south and the north. However, after encountering the strong army of the Qinji Empire, our numbers kept decreasing. Now we only have more than 10,000 people. However, each of these 10,000 people is an elite soldier. Wei Chou, draw up a list. Each veteran general of the Longdan army camp will be promoted by 1 level. The centurions will be promoted to Kiliarchs, and the Kiliarchs will be promoted to captaincy. Yes, this subordinate understands. In addition, all the new recruits of the 7 groups will be divided into 5 10,000-man battalions. Starting from the centurions, all of them will be the original generals of the Longdan army camp. I only want the new recruits from the feudal lords' armies. They are like unpolished jade waiting for us to carve. As for those generals, they are all old foxes. We don't need them. Sidhu Sen was stunned. Then how should we deal with these old foxes? Most of them are relatives of the feudal lords. If we don't deal with them properly, I'm afraid the conflict between our military and the Congress will further deepen. Find a suitable excuse. Lin Muyu thought for a while and said, Don't rush to remove them from their positions. We will start the training tomorrow. These feudal lords and generals don't know the rules of the Longdan army camp. They are used to being unbridled and undisciplined. Arrest them one by one. If they violate the military rules of the empire, no matter how big or small, they will be removed from their positions directly and be sent back to their original army. This way they will not lose their mouths and the Congress will not have a chance to take advantage of them. Sidhu Sen smiled. Marshal Lin is wise. I think, you're the one who's really a wily old fox. You're simply too scheming. Lin Muyu glared at him and said, Don't flatter me. Hurry up and get to work. Tomorrow the Congress will be drafting the Constitution. I will be there to keep an eye on it. The Longdan army camp will depend on you. How many elite soldiers we can bring out depends on you. Do you understand? Yes, we will not let Lin General down. Wei Chou, Su Jiantao, Sidhu Sen, Sidhu Shua Fengshi, and the other generals knelt on one knee. As long as Lin Muyu was there, the soul of the Longdan army camp would be there. As long as these generals were there, the bones of the Longdan army camp would be there. Lin Muyu was now just waiting for the Longdan army camp to become an invincible force again. In this way they would no longer be controlled by the feudal lords' armies. After all, the one with the strongest fist would have the most weight. This principle had never changed since ancient times. The next day, the golden horizontal board of Prince Yuning's mansion had been replaced by the Parliament House. Countless craftsmen came and went. The reconstruction work was in full swing. The meeting hall could not accommodate 200 people. It could only accommodate 100 people. The other 100 members of the Congress were all holding a meeting outside the hall. They could not even hear the content of the meeting clearly. It was drizzling, but none of the members were willing to leave. They held the meeting in the rain. Obviously, they were not willing to give up this opportunity to rise to the top of the empire. Once they lost this opportunity, they did not know when they would get it again. In the morning, the rudimentary constitution of the empire was finalized. The most important part was about the division of fiefs and the reward of new titles. Around the round table, the 10 deacons of the Congress listened quietly. Lin Muyu was whispering to Tang Xiaoxi. He was actually not interested in the specific constitution of the Congress. Naturally, Tang Xiaoxi was even less interested. However, when the topic of fiefs was mentioned, The two of them immediately listened carefully. After all, this would affect the future of the empire. Could not be ignored. Zhuang Yan slapped the table and said, "As for fiefs, we will still follow the principle of the people ruling the world together. I think the smaller the fiefs, the better. It is very important to redivide the land. All the lands of the nobles must be divided. Half of it will be given to the Congress. The Congress will hire farmers to farm and collect a certain amount of rent. The rent will be used to support the Congress." No. Feng Jixing frowned and said, "In this way the entire Congress will become a big noble family, the biggest vassal of the empire. How can they talk about the people ruling the world together? They are obviously abusing their power for personal gain." Zhuang Yan's face was a bit ugly. Obviously Feng Jixing was right. Who in the Congress would really want the people to rule the world together? It was just a nice way to put it. In fact, they just wanted to get more of the cake for themselves. Lu Xiu said, "General, what do you think?" Qin Shao said, "Dividing half of the land of the nobles to the Congress is indeed a bit too much. How about dividing 30%? At this time Lin Muyu said, "I think dividing 10% is at most. How can the Congress have so many people to feed? Giving more benefits to the farmers will make them more active. It is more important to hand over the grain to the various states and counties and turn it into military food." Qin Shao laughed. "Lin General is always the most concerned about military affairs." Lin Muyu said seriously, "Although the Tianji Empire and the Blackstone Empire were defeated, it doesn't mean they won't come again. On the contrary, I think if we continue to waste time on this kind of division of land, the more likely the Celestial Pole continent will launch the next attack." Zhuang Yan smiled and said, "The 400,000 troops of the Tianji Empire were almost wiped out by us. The 300,000 troops of the Blackstone Empire, only less than 50,000 returned. We have 400,000 troops of the feudal lords and 400,000 regular troops of the empire. Zhuang Yan, may I ask, if the Tianji Empire wants to launch another expedition, what will they use to fight against us?" Lin Muyu stood up, her eyes full of contempt. "Zhuang Yan, have you fought with the main force of the Tianji Empire?" "No, no. Then what gives you the right to talk nonsense here?" Lin Muyu's palm landed heavily on the table, causing everyone's teacups to fly. Her voice was not loud, but it was very penetrating. "Forgive me for being blunt, the 700,000 feudal lords may not even be able to defeat the 100,000 regular troops of the Tianji Empire. Everyone, don't be complacent all day long. Instead of wasting time here, why don't you think about how to strengthen the army? If the army of the Celestial Pole continent attacks again, what you have now will disappear." The feudal lords were dumbfounded. No one expected Lin Muyu to fly off the handle in public. "Lin General, calm down." Qin Shao was a little embarrassed. Lin Muyu also suddenly felt that what she had said was a little inappropriate. She said respectfully, "General, I misspoke just now. I hope you don't mind. I won't participate in the afternoon meeting. The commanders of the Empire's army are discussing military affairs in Zetian Palace." "Okay, Lin General, go do what you have to do. I will take charge of the Congress." "Yes." In the afternoon, in Zetian Palace, Qin Yin was listening to the military affairs meeting regarding the reconstruction of the Empire's army. All the commanders of the army attended the meeting. The group of generals all sat up straight and looked at the scroll in Lin Muyu's hand with burning eyes. What was written on it was very important. It was related to the future combat power of each army. "Can we start?" Lin Muyu looked up. Everyone said in unison, "Lin General, make the announcement." "Okay." Lin Muyu nodded and said, "After discussion with Xiao Yin, we have decided to keep the Empire's 10 army divisions. Among them, the Longdan Army Camp will have 100,000 soldiers, the Imperial Army will have 80,000 soldiers, the Iron Blade Army will have 50,000 soldiers, the God Might Battalion will have 30,000 soldiers, the Qin Dragon Army will have 20,000 soldiers, the National Garrison Army will have 30,000 soldiers, the Kanglan Army will have 10,000 soldiers, the 7 navies will have 30,000 soldiers, the Tsangnan Army will have 50,000 soldiers, and the Mingshan Army will have 50,000 soldiers. There will be a total of 10 army divisions. If the Demon Army in the Tongtian Gorge is added, it will be 11. We will do our best to replenish the numbers after drawing troops. Does anyone have any objections?" "Yes." In the crowd, Tang Zhen, the commander of the National Garrison Army, stood up and cupped his fists. "Lin General, the defense of the Empire's border is empty. There are no troops stationed in Lingdong province, and it has been repeatedly robbed by the Blackstone Empire's mercenary corps. Which army should we send to Winterfrost City? Chapter 938. It's not just Lingdong province that needs a garrison. All 12 provinces need one. Lin Muyu slowly sat beside Qin Yin and looked up at the crowd. But the nation has just been established, and the 300,000 soldiers assigned by the feudal lords are still in training. We need time. Xiangyu said, not only do we need to establish a new army, but we also need to guard against the feudal lords. They still have 400,000 soldiers outside Lanyan City, and Zhuang Yan and the others are gradually taking control of the nation. Even Chief Qin Yong may not be able to control them. The nation will become a big problem sooner or later. Your Highness, don't you think we should stop it? Qin Yin said faintly, I want more people to die, so I don't want to take unnecessary measures. I have handed over all military affairs to you. All of you just need to listen to use arrangements. Yes. Xiangyu nodded, and a trace of displeasure flashed across his eyes. Feng Jixing asked, do you have any ideas? Lin Muyu shook her head, there's no good way. The Great Qin Empire has been at war for 11 years, and our national strength is almost depleted. We need money to raise and recruit soldiers, and the armies of the feudal lords are not willing to follow our orders. So, we can only send our generals to the various provinces to appease the people and recruit soldiers. He said sincerely, the empire can't give you more manpower. We can only give you the Empress's decree and my appointment order. Tang Jin said respectfully, Lin General, just give the order. We are all waiting to serve the empire. Yes. Lin Muyu thought for a while and said, the demon subduing pass is located in the west. The demons and the tribes of the barbarian land have disputes. Therefore, Commander Tang Jin, you must organize 30,000 soldiers and return to the demon subduing pass within 3 days. You need to guard there. Yes, Your Highness. Tang Jin cupped his hands and smiled at Tang Xiaoxi. Another member of the Tang family was leaving Lanyan City. Lin Muyu continued, Qin Yong will be the commander of the new Iron Blade Army. Organize 50,000 soldiers in 3 days and return to Yunzhong province to guard Muyu City. Understood. Qin Yong cupped his fists. Lin Muyu glanced at the crowd and continued, Aunt Lien, you should stay in Lanyan City and send the Zither Dragon Army to Tianshu province to guard it. Su'er nodded. The Divine Might Battalion will be rebuilt with 20,000 men under the command of Divine Marquis Zheng Yifan. They will head to the Lingdong province to guard it. Chen Xiaoli will lead 37,000 naval troops back to Qihai province to defend. Su Jiantao and Xiangyu will each lead 50,000 men back to Wugu City and Shangyang City to defend. That's all. Yes. The 4 commanders cupped their fists. Zheng Yifan slowly put down the teacup in his hand and sighed. Divine Marquis, what's wrong? Lin Muyu saw through him. Zheng Yifan sighed and said, the Congress is basically under the control of Zhuang Yan, Su Changjing and the others. They have caused the capital to be in a precarious situation. Lin General, you have sent most of the imperial forces to defend the borders. Once the Congress rises in revolt, I'm afraid that the Longdan army camp and the Imperial Guard will not be able to withstand the 400,000 troops of the vassal army. Su Jiantao also cupped his fists and said, yes, Lin General, please reconsider. We are willing to defend Lanyan City with you. Tang Zhen and Qin Xiaoli also cupped their fists and said, yes, Lin General, if we all leave, who will help you if there are any changes? Tang Xiaoxi said faintly, the regular armies of the empire are like birds of a feather, but the people in the Congress may not think so. Mu, you really should reconsider. Lin Muyu was slightly moved and said, I, Lin Muyu, appreciate your kindness, but all the major provinces of the empire need you. I can only be at ease if these provinces are under your control. Only then can Her Highness be at ease. You are not far away from Lanyan City, you are running errands for it. As for the Congress, I believe they won't be able to do anything. General Feng and I are enough. Tang Xiaoxi said, yes, I will also stay in the capital. Tang Jin frowned and said, then, Commander and Princess Shi, please take care of yourselves. Su Jiantao, Qin Xiaoli, Qin Yong, and the others stood up and cupped their fists. Please take care of yourselves, Her Highness. Please take care of yourselves, Lin General. Once the capital needs you, we will definitely bring thousands of troops and horses to you. Lin Muyu nodded happily. Yes, that's what I want you to say. Go back to your fiefs and don't come back to see me if you don't bring me an iron army. Yes. The meeting of the Empire's army was much simpler than the meeting of the Congress. In the afternoon, All the major armies went to the Ministry of War to collect additional soldiers and got busy. Time passed. 3 days later, the Iron Blade Army, the National Garrison Army, and the Divine Might Battalion left Lanyan City one by one. Tang Zhen, Zheng Yifan, Xiangyu, and other important officials of the empire also left one after another. It was as if the entire capital was left with the huge Congress. 2 days later, the Constitution was drafted and approved by Qin Yin personally. On the third day, the Congress Assembly. Lin Muyu, Tang Xiaoxi, Feng Jixing, Wei Chou, and Suyu attended the Congress together. Everyone had received some news about the army of the Congress, but no one said it out loud, so they could only wait quietly. Everyone please be quiet. After many days of recuperation, Qin Lian's complexion was much better. With a single order, the noisy Congress Assembly naturally quieted down. Qin Lian paused and said, "Lord Zhuangyan, you can now announce the proposal of the Congress Army." "Yes, Commander." Zhuangyan nodded respectfully, then walked to the center of the huge conference table with a scroll in his hand. He bowed to everyone and said, "As everyone knows, there is a continent in the sky outside of our eastern coast. It is divided into the Tianji Empire, the Celestial Empire, and the Blackstone Empire. Although the Tianji Empire and the Blackstone Empire were defeated by the Great Qin Empire, a centipede is still alive. Recently we have received news that the Tianji Empire and the Celestial Empire are ready to make a move. Therefore the Congress has decided to gather the armies of the feudal lords and establish the Congress Army. The plan is to have more than 400,000 soldiers." "A 400,000 soldier army?" Lin Muyu frowned and said, "I have never heard of an army reaching 400,000 soldiers. The empire already has 11 regular armies, and the capital has the protection of the Imperial Guard and the Dragon's Courage Legion. In my opinion, there is no need to establish the Congress Army. The empire is exhausted and the people have no way to make a living. How would there be enough food and resources to support such a large army?" Lin General's words are incorrect. Zhuangyan smiled faintly. As the highest authority of the Great Qin Empire, how could there not be an army to maintain the existence of the Congress? Moreover, the Congress Army is actually an army to maintain the fairness and execution of the Constitution. It has great value in existence. It can be said that only with the establishment of the Congress Army can the Constitution be smoothly implemented. Lin General is also someone who understands politics, so you should understand this logic, right? Lin Muyu looked at him coldly and said, "I am the highest commander of the empire's military. It will only be established if I say it can be established. Otherwise, I will never approve of the establishment of the Congress Army." "I don't need your approval." Zhuangyan smiled and said, "Article 3 of the empire's constitution has already stipulated that the establishment of a new army only requires the approval of the Congress and the signature of the Empress. Moreover, if the Congress Army is not established, the 400,000 soldiers outside Lanyan City will have nowhere to go. If they become bandits or refugees, it will be disadvantageous to the people. What do you think, Lin General?" Feng Jixing said angrily, "Zhuangyan, aren't you being too overbearing?" Zhuangyan cupped his hands and said, "General Feng, I am merely exercising the power of the Congress Army according to the law. If General Feng feels that it is inappropriate, you can raise an objection to the Chief or Her Highness." With that, Zhuangyan raised his head and said to the people in the Congress, "Now, let's vote on whether the Congress Army can be established and implemented. Please vote." "I object." Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, and Wei Chou raised their hands almost at the same time. Soon after, Tang Xiaoxi and Suyu also expressed their objection. Half of the 10 great attendants had already objected. However, the other 5 were all Zhuangyan's men and expressed their approval in unison. Zhuangyan then looked at Qin Lian and said respectfully, "Chief, your opinion is of utmost importance." Qin Lian seemed a little tired. She waved her hand and said, "Pass it. Submit the decision to Her Highness. As long as Her Highness approves, this decision will be considered passed." "Yes." In the hall, more than half of the parliament members raised their hands in approval. Most of them were feudal vassals, so how could they not agree to the establishment of the Congress Army? For them this would only be beneficial. After all, the original feudal vassal army was just a motley crew without any formal organization, let alone obtaining equipment, weapons and rations from the empire. After the meeting, Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, and the others walked side by side. All of them looked unhappy. "Xiaoyin will definitely not sign it." Tang Xiaoxi pouted and said. "Not necessarily," Feng Jixing said. "Why?" Tang Xiaoxi asked. Su'er said, because Xiaoyin is under too much pressure. The feudal vassals are overbearing. If we don't agree to the establishment of the Congress army, I'm afraid they will exert more pressure and continuously deprive the Empress of her original power. What do you think? Lin Muyu was silent for a few seconds before saying, if we really can't stop them, then don't stop them. If they want to establish the Congress army, then so be it. Feng Jixing hurriedly asked, have you given up too? No. Lin Muyu said, I've thought about it. The 400,000 feudal vassal army is a motley crew, but after the reconstruction of the Congress army, it will be trained uniformly. Perhaps it will really have combat power. Once the celestial pole continent invades again, this Congress army will also become a force for us to resist the strong enemy, right? Then, do you want to convince Her Highness to sign it? It's not a matter of whether I can convince her or not, but Xiaoyin will sign it. Lin Muyu frowned and said, from our point of view, the establishment of the Congress army will have a certain impact on our regular army. However, to Xiaoyin, the establishment of the Congress army isn't a bad thing. If Xiaoyin is a wise ruler, she will agree. Zhuang Yin, Su Chengjing, and the others have ulterior motives. Don't think too optimistically. I know, but there's nothing we can do about it. Lin Muyu smiled helplessly. At this moment, she felt that she, the marshal of the empire, had become a stumbling block for the advancement of civilization. However, who could say for sure what would happen in this world? Chapter 939. In the quiet autumn night of Zetian Palace, a cool breeze was blowing. The maple leaves in the courtyard were scattered all over the ground, making rustling sounds as they rolled along with the wind. The lights in the Phoenix Perching Palace were also swaying along with the gentle breeze. 8 maids stood respectfully at the side. Shengguan Jingyue was holding the scroll presented by the parliament and said, Your Highness, have you decided? Qin Yin knelt on the rusted golden carpet. Her palm was enshrouded in light. It seemed that the divine power of light had increased a little. She took a deep breath and opened her flaming eyes a little. She said, Brother Yu, what do you think? Lin Muyu sat by the warm stove with a plate full of grapes in her hand. She said, It's up to you. You're the marshal. You're the one who decides the new legion. No, it's not an ordinary legion. It's the Imperial Army. Lin Muyu spat the grape seeds into the plate and said, Once the Imperial Army is established, the Supreme Commander will not be me. It will be directly commanded by the President of the Congress. So, it's better to ask President Qin Lian about this. It doesn't have much to do with me. Is the Imperial Army really established to defend the dignity of the Constitution? Qin Yin said faintly. At least that's what they say. Lin Muyu smiled faintly. But who knows? Xiaoyin, you decide for yourself. Whether you agree or disagree, I'll support you. In fact, we don't have to worry too much. Even if the Imperial Army is established, it won't make much of a difference. The warhorses, weapons, magic crystal cannons, and magic crystal crossbows of the Ministry of War have to be signed by me. Even if the Imperial Army is established, I won't approve the magic crystal cannons. I think the elites of the Longdan army camp will be enough to destroy the 400,000 soldiers of the Imperial Army. Then, I'll approve it. Qin Yin said, It's not a good idea to keep the 400,000 soldiers outside the city. They'll threaten the safety of Lanyan City at any time. Yes, that's what I think too. Lin Muyu cupped her fists and said, Xiaoyin, I have another request. Qin Yin narrowed her beautiful eyes and looked at him. She put her hand on Lin Muyu's clenched fist and said with a gentle smile, Don't be so polite to me. There are only you and me here. Shengguan Jingyue turned around and pretended that she didn't exist. Lin Muyu loosened her grip and wrapped her arms around Qin Yin's slender waist. I want to appoint a new Minister of War. I want Wei Chou to be in charge of the Ministry of War and Qin Xiling to be in charge of the Weapons Department. I want the entire Imperial military under my control. Otherwise, I'm afraid they'll target me as soon as the Imperial Army is established. Yes, I approve. Qin Yin chuckled. The next morning, during the morning court session, the Empress's court session didn't conflict with the Imperial Army. Those who attended the court session were all important officials from the 6 ministries and 3 departments. Outside Zetian Palace Hall, Wei Chou, Zhang Wei, and the other generals unsheathed their swords and hung them on the sword rack outside the hall. They removed their boots and were inspected by the Imperial Guards before they could enter the hall. This was a rule that had been in place for thousands of years. However, Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing were allowed to bring weapons into the hall. This was a special pardon from the Empress. Lin Muyu placed her hand on the hilt of the Xinyuan sword and waited for Wei Chou, Sidu Sen, and the others to complete the inspection before they entered the hall together. Not long after, a group of people from the Imperial Army arrived with Chief Qin Lian. Situ Sen, Wei Chou, Zhang Wei, Luo Yu and the others exchanged glances with Salam, Su Changjing and Zhou Heng. The entire Great Qin court session had been divided into two factions. The Empress was on one side while Chief Qin Lian was on the other. The court session shall begin. The attendant's voice was drawn out. Under the protection of Tang Xiaoxi and Terralin, Qin Yin sat on the throne and waved her hand. Shengguan Jingyue stepped forward and announced, "Chief, Her Highness has approved the proposal to establish the Imperial Army." Qin Lian nodded. Zhuang Yan, Su Changjing, and the others knelt down excitedly. "Thank you, Your Highness, for your approval." Shengguan Jingyue smiled and said, "However, Her Highness has decided to promote the former Duke of Wei, Wei Chou, to be the Minister of War and Qin Xiling to be the Chief of the Department of Weapons." Zhuang Yan was taken aback and said, "The Minister of War is such an important position. The appointment of the candidate should be approved by the Imperial Army before it can take effect. This is one of the provisions of the Constitution. Your Highness, please consider it." Qin Yin said faintly, "I approved the establishment of the Imperial Army and the Imperial Army approved my decision. Isn't this fair? I'm the Empress. Do I have to seek your approval for the appointment of the Minister of War?" Zhuang Yan was stunned and said, "But Your Highness, this matter is very important. If it isn't approved by the Imperial Army..." Before he finished his sentence, Qin Yin suddenly disappeared from the throne and appeared in front of Zhuang Yan in the next moment. A sharp sword was pressed against Zhuang Yan's neck. Blood flowed down along the edge of the star sword. Qin Yin slowly opened her flaming eyes and said in an unusually cold voice, "I'm the Empress. I have the final say in this world. Zhuang Yan, go and play your Imperial Army's game. Don't be so shameless. If you force me again, I guarantee that everyone in the Imperial Army will evaporate from this world." "Your Highness, I..." Zhuang Yan's voice trembled. "Pay attention to the way you address yourself." Qin Yin said faintly, "Say it again." Zhuang Yan knelt down with a thud and said, "Your Highness, I know my mistake." Qin Yin nodded and turned around to fly up the throne. She looked disdainfully and said faintly, "From today onwards, the members of the Imperial Army don't have to participate in the court meetings of Zetian Palace." Everyone was trembling with fear. Only Qin Lian held the jade tablet in her hand and said respectfully, "Your Highness, there are many things waiting to be done in the Empire. The Imperial Army is also thinking of the Empire's long-term stability. I hope that Your Highness will not misunderstand. As the Chief of the Imperial Army, I'm also Your Highness's subordinate. Of course, I know what I'm doing. Your Highness, please think clearly. The Imperial Army definitely has no intention of disobeying." "I know. Don't worry too much, Imperial Uncle." Qin Yin nodded and said, "Then regarding the matter of the Minister of War and the Chief of Weapons, it's decided. In addition, after the establishment of the Imperial Army, it must obey Marshal Lin Muyu's orders." Su Changjing hurriedly cupped his fists and said, "Please be careful, Your Highness. The establishment of the Imperial Army is to defend the dignity of the Constitution. It's not a private army. I suggest that the Tiger Tally for the mobilization of the Imperial Army be split into two. The Chief will have one and Your Highness will have one. Only when both Tiger Tally are present can the Imperial Army be mobilized. This way the Imperial Army can also be ensured." Qin Lian cupped her fists and said, "I agree." Qin Yin seemed a little tired and said, "Yes, it's approved." Qin Lian continued, "The initial establishment of the Imperial Army is 400,000 people. It can be said to be the most powerful army in the Empire. So, the demand for weapons, equipment and war horses is very high. Your Highness, I have drawn up some choices and hope that the Minister of War can approve them." The corner of Qin Yin's mouth rose. "Master Wei Chou, I'll leave this matter to you. Chief, you can read out the details of your list in public." "Yes." Qin Lian said, 200,000 pieces of armor, 50,000 war horses, 300,000 swords, 100,000 spears, 10,000 arrow boxes, 5,000 magic crystal cannons, 20,000 magic crystal crossbows, and 100,000 magic crystal cannons. I hope Master Wei can prepare these equipment in time." Wei Chou couldn't help but laugh. "Master Wei Chou, what are you laughing at?" Zhuang Yan asked. "I'm laughing that the chief doesn't know what year it is." "Wei Chou, how dare you?" Zhuang Yan scolded. Wei Chou said coldly, I think this list wasn't chosen by the chief, but by Zhuang Yan himself. You want so many weapons, do you really think the supplies in the Imperial Army are endless? 100,000 magic crystal cannons, do you think magic crystals grow out of the ground? Let me tell you, magic crystals were originally obtained from recasting magic crystal coins taken from the demons. But these years we almost blew up all the magic crystal coins. If you want more magic crystals, you have to go deep into the mountains like the dragon-seeking forest to dig. Only the corpses of ancient monsters can condense magic crystals. I don't need to say how precious magic crystals are. The Imperial Army wants 100,000 cannons, but we don't have one, not even one. Qin Lian frowned and said, Master Wei Chou, don't be angry. Maybe this list is really inappropriate. I think, why don't we change it to 1,000 magic crystal cannons and 10,000 cannons? Also no. Wei Chou said proudly, magic crystal cannons are used to deal with foreign races. They will only be distributed to the major armies during times of war, so there definitely won't be any now. But, Zhuang Yan laughed coldly. But the Longdan army camp and the Imperial Army are clearly equipped with magic crystal cannons and magic crystal crossbows. What? Is the Imperial Army not the Imperial Army? Who is the highest commander of the Imperial Army? Wei Chou asked. Naturally, the chief. Zhuang Yan cupped his hands at Qin Lian, his respect evident in his words. Wei Chou laughed. That's enough. The highest commander of the Imperial Army is actually not the Imperial Marshal, but a chief. Can this kind of army still be considered the Imperial Army? Since Her Highness has appointed me, Wei Chou, as the Minister of War, I naturally have to carefully consider this matter. Unless the Imperial Army is directly under Lin General's command, don't even think about getting any magic crystal cannons from me. As he said this, Wei Chou looked at the assistant ministers of the Ministry of War and said, Remember, strictly inspect all the weapons in the Empire. Any magic crystal cannons that are not registered will be deemed illegal and will be severely punished. All magic crystal cannons must be numbered and strictly inspected. Do you all understand? Yes, Master. Zhuang Yan, Su Chengjing, and the others were so angry that they trembled. Who was Wei Chou? He was a famous general who had experienced hundreds of battles. He didn't give Chief Qin any face at all. Feng Jixing was grinning from ear to ear at the side. No wonder Lin Muyu didn't seem to care. Everything had already been arranged. It would be strange if Wei Chou hadn't personally taught him these words. At this moment, Qin Lian said in a low voice, Minister of War, Master Wei Chou, then, after the Imperial Army is established, how many weapons and equipment will the Ministry of War distribute to us? Wei Chou muttered, 500 war horses, 5,000 sets of armor, 10,000 swords and 8,000 spears. Will Chief take a look at these? After all, the Empire has just gone through a war and lacks resources. You see, even the war horses for Her Highness Yin's carriage can't be of the same color. How can the Imperial Army be too extravagant? Qin Lian took a deep breath and said, If that's the case, then so be it. I will think of a way to deal with the weapons of the Imperial Army. Thank you, Minister of War. When will the equipment and war horses be delivered? Wei Chou also took a deep breath and said, In 6 months. Chapter 940. In the Heaven Pole continent, it had been peaceful for nearly a month. There was no war between the three empires, but more and more troops were gathering at the border, so that the Celestial Empire stationed millions of troops outside the Forest of No Return, which made the Tianji Empire and the Blackstone Empire tremble with fear and sleepless. At night, the roars of beasts could be heard in the silent night sky. Not only were there wild beasts in the Forest of No Return, but there were also the habitat of the Demon Spirit clan. Even the legendary demon Emperor Nusslayer lived in this forest. This was also one of the reasons why the Celestial Empire had not invaded the border. In a camp of white tents, the royal flag was fluttering. In the central tent, Qin invited the officials to a banquet. However, he did not use wine but tea. Teacups brimming with a faint fragrance were placed on the table in front of the officials, and Qin personally poured tea for each cup on the plate. The officials watched dumbfoundedly, no one saying anything. Ever since Qin the new emperor, ascended the throne, he had always been so unfathomable. Fully tea can clear the heart and clear the eyes, and it can also keep people calm so that they won't lose their minds in the face of major issues. Qin said slowly, I think all of you must want to ask why I'm entertaining you with tea. There's no other reason. Good wine can inspire people and unite them, but it can also make people drunk and lose their fighting spirit. At this moment, if we can't maintain our calm, we'll definitely end up with the destruction of our country and the destruction of our families. Dongqing Wang squinted his eyes and said with a smile, "Your Majesty is right." Liao Yang, who was wearing a soft armor, also picked up the teacup, took a sip and said, "Your Majesty's tea is really memorable. I admire you." At this time, a strong general with a face full of beard cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, the 400,000 soldiers of the Qinji Empire suffered a tragic defeat in the Shattered Cauldron world. Only less than 8,000 people returned to the mainland, and the rest have been killed or captured. Now the Qinji Empire only has the Yinji Corps and the Lanji Corps led by General Zhang Qing. Even Marshal Baiming Huan was killed by Lin Muyu of the Shattered Cauldron world. What does the Qinji Empire fear now?" Qin Yu looked up and said with a smile, "Lord Zhou Binlong, the commander of the Earth's End Corps. You're right, the Qinji Empire was indeed defeated in the Shattered Cauldron realm, but you're wrong about one thing. Their strength hasn't been weakened too much. The Yinji Corps and the Lanji Corps still have at least 500,000 people, and with the newly recruited corps, they have at least 700,000 soldiers. Although Baiming Huan is dead, they have gained a 90 Heavens Radiant Angel Midnight, as well as the Battle Angel Dora, who holds the Dagger of Time. If we declare war on the Qinji Empire, it will force Sikong Ming's Qinji sect to join the war. Once they join forces with the Demon Emperor Nu Sha from the Forest of No Return, I'm afraid the situation will change drastically, and the Celestial Empire will be at a disadvantage." Zhou Binlong was taken aback. "Your Majesty, are we supposed to wait here bitterly? An army of 1,000,000 people consumes a huge amount of food every day, and transporting food is laborious and laborious. At least 3,000,000 people have to transport food every day. If this goes on, the strength of our country will be completely exhausted by this unfought war." "I know. Commander Zhou, please sit down." Qin Yu raised his hand. Following his gesture, Zhou Binlong slowly sat down. "Sect Master Han Yuan, what do you think?" Qin Yu looked at Han Yuan, who had been silent all this while. Han Yuan's cultivation was profound. He just smiled faintly and said, "I don't know much about the military affairs of the country. Your Majesty, you can decide on your own. There's no need to ask me. If you need my Qinji sect, I will do my best to help." "Okay, thank you, Lord." Qin Yu cupped his hands and bowed. Then he looked at Dongqing Wang and asked, "What do you think?" Dongqing Wang was the supreme commander of the 300,000 Qinji army and the most knowledgeable person in the Celestial Empire in the art of war. Naturally, he had to ask him in the end. "Hey," Dongqing Wang gave a hollow laugh, stroked his beard and said, "Your Majesty, the situation at this time has been completely reversed. The focus of the war of the Qinji Empire has completely shifted from the Shattered Tripod world to the Celestial Pole continent. As long as we attack the Blackstone Empire, Zhang Qing will definitely take advantage of the situation and attack us. So, I think if we want to fight, we can only attack the Qinji Empire, and let the Blackstone Empire be in chaos. It is said that the mercenaries near the capital of the Blackstone Empire are in chaos. Emperor Shi Yuan has a headache solving the problem of the mercenaries, so he can't manage the border at all." "Well, it makes sense. Then what? Compared with the army of the Qinji Empire, some of our troops are weak and some are strong." Qin Yu's eyes lit up. "Dongqing Wang, please say it." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Dongqing Wang cupped his hands to salute and continued, "The first weakness of our army is that it is too messy and lacks training. Besides, our Celestial Empire hasn't experienced a real war for too many years, so I'm afraid the soldiers will not be able to adapt to it. The second weakness is that our equipment is far inferior to that of our opponent. The craftsmen of the Qinji Empire are dexterous and can cast fine steel swords, but most of the common weapons of our army are made of iron, and some subordinate armies even use bronze weapons which are vulnerable on the battlefield. The third weakness is that our food reserves are far less than that of the Qinji Empire. Although our country is vast, the area of cultivated land is not as large as that of the Qinji Empire. In addition, the number of our army is far greater than that of the Qinji Empire. If we fight a war of attrition, we will be exhausted." Qin Yu frowned. The weaknesses listed by Dongqing Wang were like sharp knives stabbing his heart. He nodded and said, "What he said is right. So, if our country goes to war with the Qinji Empire, won't we lose?" Dongqing Wang shook his head and smiled. "Not so. We still have a few advantages." "Please say it." "The first advantage is the Dragon Riders. According to our intelligence, the Qinji Empire suffered a crushing defeat in the battle with the Qin Empire in the Shattered Tripod world. Nearly 200 dragon riders were killed in the blink of an eye. Now, the Qinji Empire only has 50 dragon riders at most. Thousands of years of cultivation in their dragon nest has almost been destroyed. On the other hand, we have more than 400 dragon riders in the Qinji Empire, which is enough to conquer the world. The second advantage is the will of the people. The Qinji Empire launched an expedition to the shattered tripod world, but it failed miserably. The people in the country are angry and bandits are rampant. Baiming Yuan not only has to deal with us, but also has to divide his troops to suppress the bandits and rebels. So, although his troops are elite, he will be far less than us in number. The third advantage is internal strife. Yes, the Radiant Angel Zai is strong, but he is also arrogant and condescending. He thinks he is an angel sent from the heaven realm, so he will not take Baiming Yuan, the emperor with low cultivation, seriously. No one knows whether it is Baiming Yuan or Zai who has the final say in the Qinji Empire. When the time comes, the Qinji Empire will naturally fall into internal strife. As he spoke, Dongqing Wang paused and a proud smile appeared in his eyes. Although our army has 3 major weaknesses, we also have 3 major advantages. As long as we can persuade the Demon Spirit clan to help us, we will naturally be able to destroy the Qinji Empire. Destroy the Qinji Empire? Qinyu suddenly smiled. What? Don't you want to destroy the Qinji Empire, Your Majesty? Dongqing Wang was stunned. Of course I want to, but I can't yet. Qinyu squinted and said, the Qinji Empire has deep roots and flourishing leaves. How can it be destroyed in 2 or 3 years? Moreover, the Qinji sect has not taken any action yet. Once Xikong Ming takes action, who can predict the outcome? Besides, Dongqing Wang, you are very clear. Don't you think our strongest enemy is no longer the Qinji Empire? Dongqing Wang was stunned. Not the Qinji Empire? Then who is it? Qinyu held up the teacup, raised it to the west and said with a smile, our friends in the west. Your Majesty, you mean, the Qin Empire in the shattered tripod world? Yes. Qinyu's face turned cold and he said, the Qin Empire can defeat the joint expeditionary forces of the Qinji Empire and the Blackstone Empire, and kill Bailey Qin, Baiming Huan, Han Shu and others. In terms of strategy and force, which one of them is not better than the Qinji Empire? Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing, Su Jiantao, and Wei Chou are all extraordinary generals. I really don't know whether it is our celestial empire's fortune or misfortune to have such friends. Dongqing Wang nodded and thought for a while and then said, I thought Your Majesty and Lin Muyu are bosom friends, and you have already treated each other with sincerity. That was then and this is now. Qinyu said, in the past it was Lin Muyu who needed our celestial empire to contain the 2 empires. Now Lin Muyu has unified the shattered tripod world. No one knows what he is thinking. Will he be willing to divide the world with me, one in the east and the other in the west? Or will he send troops to the east to seize the world of our celestial pole continent? Dongqing Wang said, according to Your Majesty's understanding of him, what kind of person is he? Qinyu smiled faintly and said to himself, he is as calm as a cold pond and as active as a torrent. He is strategic and ambitious. No one knows what kind of person Lin Muyu is. If he is only willing to be the king of a region, that's fine. But if Lin Muyu has the world in his mind, it will be a disaster for the whole celestial pole continent. We have to guard against him. Well, I understand. At this moment, Liao Yang suddenly smiled. I think Your Majesty doesn't have to be so nervous. Why? Qinyu was stunned. Liao Yang said, according to our latest intelligence, Lin Muyu previously issued an edict that allowed local officials to recruit troops and recover cities on their own. This edict caused more than 100 feudal vassals to appear in the 12 provinces of the Qin Empire, with a total of 700,000 to 800,000 troops. However, these feudal vassals were unwilling to be controlled by Lin Muyu, so they established a national army and even tried to establish a national army to contend against the 100,000 regular troops controlled by Lin Muyu. Now, Lin Muyu has already been forced to strip off his title as the Qin king and demoted to a mere commander. Moreover, even the power of Empress Qinyin has been divided quite a bit, so the current Lin Muyu should be too busy to take care of himself, so how can he counterattack our celestial pole continent? Qinyu couldn't help but laugh. He slapped his thigh and said, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Every family has its own difficulties. I didn't expect that the wise and decisive Lin Muyu would also be so deeply mired in a quagmire. That's great. In this way we can rush to unify the whole celestial pole continent before Lin Muyu escapes from the quagmire, and we will reign supreme. Yes. Qinyu looked at Han Yuan and said, I have decided to go see the Demon Emperor Nushi. I hope that Sect Master will accompany me to make sure everything is safe. Han Yuan cupped his hands. As you command. Chapter 941. In the forest of no return, the leaves were luxuriant and the moonlight was bright. There was a faint fragrance of fruits in the beautiful wilderness. In late autumn, all the fruits in the forest had ripened. However, at this moment, a heavenly song was floating in the air. There are spirits in the mountains and demons on the ground. Rain falls from the sky and springs on the ground. Gather my race and enjoy the sun and the moon. Kill all the alien races and protect the universe. It was the voice of the Demon Emperor Nushi. In the forest, the sound of footsteps was getting louder. Qinyu changed into a soft armor and cloak. Under the protection of Han Yuan, Liao Yang, and the other cultivators, he slowly approached the high cliff in the distance. They did not fly as a sign of respect to the Demon Emperor Nushi. In the sky beside him, there were a few Demon King-level demons flying around at a moderate distance. They looked like guards in surveillance at the same time. After a while, when Qinyu and the rest stepped onto the high cliff, a piercingly cold wind suddenly blew. It was the sound wave attack of the Demon Emperor Nushi. Your Majesty, be careful. Han Yuan instantly moved in front of Qinyu. He opened his sleeves and an invisible wall condensed in front of him, easily dispersing the attack of the Demon Emperor. He slowly cupped his fists and said in a deep voice, the sacred martial emperor of the Celestial Empire, Qinyu, and the sect leader of the Qinjue sect, Han Yuan, seek an audience with the Demon Emperor Nushi. On the cliff, a graceful figure floated out while hugging a pipa. It was the Demon Empress Nushi. She was as beautiful as ever. Under the moonlight, her graceful figure was extremely enchanting. The corners of her mouth curled up as she said with a faint smile, the Demon Spirit Clan and the Heavenly Jew Empire have always minded our own business. I wonder what business you have with my forest of no return? Qinyu said respectfully, there is a strange phenomenon in the sky and the universe has reversed. The war in the mortal world is imminent. There will definitely be a war between the Celestial Empire and the Qinji Empire. The Celestial Empire has always respected the Demon Spirit Clan. Therefore, Qinyu has come to the Forest of No Return to ask for an alliance with the Demon Spirit Clan to resist the atrocities of the Qinji Empire. Covenant? Demon Emperor Nushi slowly descended, followed by a few demon kings behind her. She smiled and said, I think Your Majesty Qinyu must have misunderstood. Our demon spirit race will not participate in any war. Even if we participate in a war, it will definitely be for the dignity of the demon spirit race. I, Nushi, will not allow my clansmen to die for others. Therefore, Your Majesty Qinyu, please return. Your Majesty, please listen to me. Qinyu continued to cup his fists and said unwillingly, the demon spirit race has always been seen as a thorn in the side by the three empires. Everyone has the right to kill them. However, there are many people who use the demon spirit stone as a catalyst for cultivation. As long as Your Majesty helps me defeat the Qinji Empire, when I, Qinyu, descend to the world, I will definitely pardon all the demon spirits in the world. I will allow the demon spirits to share the sun, moon, mountains and rivers with humans. What do you think? Nushi couldn't help but laugh. She laughed so hard that even the two towering peaks on her chest were jiggling up and down. People couldn't help but take a few more glances. She covered her mouth and laughed. The demon spirits are born in the forest. This world has always been our home. Why do we need to rely on humans? I think Your Majesty Qinyu must have misunderstood. The demon spirits don't want to rely on anyone. Moreover, you said that you will grant us a place to live under the sovereign descent, but I don't believe you. Qinyu's face turned pale. What do you mean? Nushi stretched out her jade-like finger and lightly poked Qinyu's chest armor. You said it yourself. Humans cultivate using the demon spirit stones as food. Then why would I cooperate with humans? Moreover, in Your Majesty Qinyu's eyes, I can only see ambition and schemes. I can't see compassion and justice. Compassion and justice? Qinyu gritted his teeth. I, Qinyu, have been pardoning the world since the day I ascended to the throne. For the sake of the people, I'm not willing to go to war. If my eyes are not compassion and justice, then who is the ruler of the world? I've seen one person. Yes. Who? Let me. You? Qinyu felt as if he was struck by lightning. Han Yuan smiled and said, Your Majesty, let's go. It seems that Your Majesty is really unwilling to cooperate with our celestial empire. Since that's the case, we can only open the way ourselves. Nushi raised her brows. Sect leader Han Yuan, please wait. What do you mean by opening the way ourselves? Han Yuan turned around and said respectfully, the Celestial Empire's millions of troops want to conquer the forest of no return. Right now it's late autumn and the leaves are withering. Naturally they will cut down the forest. But as long as we set fire to the east, I think we can turn the forest of no return into a wasteland in half a month. That way the pythons and beasts in the forest won't be an obstacle for our Celestial Empire. What did you say? You dare? Nushi gritted her teeth and flew up with her pipa. Her divine power surged as if she would attack at any moment. But Han Yuan was still smiling. His strength wasn't below Nushi's and he wasn't afraid at all. He said calmly, this is what your majesty is forcing us to do. Other than burning the forest, does our Celestial Empire have any other choice? If you dare to burn the forest, I will let the people of your Celestial Empire die without a burial ground. If you don't believe me, you can try. Nushi threatened with a cold face. Han Yuan laughed, there's nothing to fear. Once we return we will start the fire tomorrow. Your majesty should bring your people to hide, but Zhangcheng's Yanji Corps encampment is 100 miles to the west. Once the tens of thousands of demon spirits leave the forest of no return, I don't know if the Celestial Emperor Zhangcheng will let go of this delicious meal. Despicable. Nushi was so angry that her body trembled. The demon kings behind her roared with sinister expressions. One of them shouted, Your Majesty, let's fight it out with them. Nushi shook her head and retracted her divine power. She said, I can't let my anger bring the entire race to eternal damnation. I can't? Qinyu laughed. Then, Your Majesty, can we talk about cooperation now? Speak, how do you want to cooperate? It's very simple. Qinyu waved his hand and said, Open a path in the forest of no return for my army. When my army enters the west of the forest of no return, we will launch an attack on Zhangcheng's Yanji Corps. At that time, Your Majesty, please lead the demon race army to assist us from the other side. As long as we defeat Zhangcheng's Yanji Corps, I promise to give the demon race a new status in the continent. Nushi looked at him coldly and said, This is what you said. I hope that Your Majesty Qinyu will not go back on his words. Your Majesty, please rest assured. Qinyu cupped his hands and smiled. Then I will go back and wait for Your Majesty's news. I won't send you off. After watching Qinyu and the others fly far away, the demon kings were so angry that they bared their teeth. One of them said, Your Majesty, how can we be threatened by such despicable people? The demon race will be consigned to eternal damnation from today onwards. If they really set the forest on fire, what should we do? Nushi's question made all the demon kings speechless. After a while, Nushi sighed softly and said, Is there any news from the Shattered Cauldron realm? Yes, we bought new information from the merchants. The main forces of the Tianji Empire and the Blackstone Empire have been defeated by the Qin army. The Qin Emperor Lin Muyu has found the Empress Qin Yin and has reinstated Qin Yin as the Empress. Now that the Shattered Cauldron realm has been unified, the national strength is very weak. I'm afraid it won't be easy for them to counterattack the Celestial Pole continent. Humph. Nushi's beautiful eyebrows glowed with an enchanting luster under the bright moon. She murmured, It doesn't matter. I have eternal life. I can wait until Lin Muyu leads the army on an expedition to the east. At that time I will make Qinyu Han Yuan, and these despicable people die without a burial place. Your Majesty, you want to form an alliance with the Qin army? A demon king who looked like a goblin asked, dumbfounded. Nushi smiled faintly, not with the Qin army but with Lin Muyu. What? That brat isn't in high demand. I don't think he's as handsome as I am. What do you know? Nushi rolled her eyes at him disdainfully and said, Lin Muyu has a righteous aura. Even if he is the ruler of the world, he must be a benevolent ruler. He is definitely not someone that a scheming kid like Qinyu can be compared to. Moreover, Lin Muyu's identity is special. He has the disposition of a supreme being. His sworn brother is the ruler of the Eastern Heaven Realm, and his sworn sister Qin Yin's sister is the blazing angel Shi Yen of the Western Heaven Realm. It can be said that he is the most fragrant person in the entire Eastern and Western Heaven Realms. What do you know? What are you talking nonsense here? Besides, you wouldn't even let a dog eat you. You still have the cheek to say that you are more handsome than Lin Muyu? The Demon King muttered, Your Majesty is wise. You can even see through this. Western Heaven Realm. In the middle of the spiritual mountains, a floating continent stood majestically. It was late at night. In the forest, there was a huge rock glowing with a faint golden light. Countless names were faintly discernible on it. But at this moment, the light on many of the names was slowly dissipating and finally disappeared completely. The Shrine Rock. The name of anyone who became a god of the Western Heaven realm would appear on the Shrine Rock. This rock recorded the glory and decline of the Western Divine Realm. It had been standing for hundreds of thousands of years. On the Shrine Rock, light slowly flickered. Another name was disappearing. In the air, Seraph Shiyin hovered there with a sharp sword in her hand. Her deep eyes stared at the disappearing name on the rock and murmured, "Is all this worth it?" Ruler Claude said indifferently, "Winner takes all. This is the price. Can't you see it clearly?" Shiyin smiled faintly. "Lord Ruler, Shiyin has a request." "Speak." Ruler turned his back to her. "Shiyin is tired. I want to return to my hometown to rest for a while." "What did you say?" Claude was shocked. "East Heaven can make a comeback at any time. Western Heaven realm is in need of people. Shiyin, as one of the two blazing angels, how can you just leave like that?" Shiyin tightened her grip on her sword and said, "I'm tired of all this. I want to be quiet for a while." When Claude looked again, he saw that Shiyin already had 6 bright wings behind her. She had raised her power to the limit. Her divine power was no weaker than his. "Shiyin, what exactly do you want to do?" Lao Hua on the side was a little panicked. "Ruler, please allow me." Shiyin knelt down on one knee. Claude let out a long sigh. Fine. You can go." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.